Boy, Pokemon sure had a rough transition to 3D, as all the mainline Pokemon games can be pretty easily separated into different eras based on whichever console they're on. The Game Boy games are primitive, yes, but they still laid the groundwork for everything to come and have tons of their own charm and jank. Now, the series run on the DS is widely considered some of the best, with most of the games not only being packed with tons of varied quality content, but also ambition. The Switch era broke so many molds and conventions, finally shaking up and evolving the series after so long. And it's notable for other things too. But among all the series eras, one is far and away the most controversial. Yeah, the Switch era. But second place is easily the 3DS era, where plenty of people say the series started falling into inconsistency. And at the forefront of the discussion is always the series' first 3DS entries, Pokemon X and Y. The series' big grand leap into 3D is almost universally considered either inconsequential or just mid to flat out bad, which is kind of weird to think about. Hell, even the other 3DS games, which have their own share of controversies, are mostly better regarded than Kalos. So were X and Y really that bad? Well, I replayed the entirety of them, taking almost everything in again, and they're special, genuinely, in both good ways and pretty bad ways. So we'll be going through the whole journey, stopping to elaborate on things as they come up, or just to give my thoughts. So here we go, I guess. Let's dive into Pokemon's beginning of the end, apparently. Upon first booting the game and choosing our language, a first for the series actually, we're thrust straight into our classic opening exposition, headed by one Professor Sycamore. And from the very start, you can see pretty clearly that they're super proud of this game being in 3D. I mean, overall, it is more or less your standard welcome to the world of Pokemon speech, with the professor introducing you while standing in an ominous void. But there's a lot more flair to it this time around with the simple addition of camera movement, with some pretty creative shots and transitions, and there's even a nice pan across this cute mural here, actually showing us a bit of the wide world of Pokemon we're about to step into. But overall, it's simple yet effective. Pokemon, but in 3D! And as for our character, this is the first time in the franchise we get any degree of customization. A small degree is still a degree, it gets better later, I promise. And actually, choosing your character in this game is a bit different than the others, in the sense that it kind of does matter quite a bit, and we'll get there when we get there. But with all that sorted, we take our step into the world of Pokemon. In 3... Even after that opening, the ambition keeps coming, with a pretty sweet tracking shot of our pet Fletchling waking us up, albeit kind of violently. I also like how they didn't want to make new animations for Serena without her handbag, so she's just holding a 3DS. That's pretty charming. And speaking of charming, the visual style of this game is super unique, at least with the overworld character models anyway. In a sense, they're kind of an in-between of the older sprites and the newer fully proportioned models, keeping the more abstract cutesy look, but without needing to crush the characters into little cubes anymore. Now, for as charming as these models are, they do have their downsides, which will become apparent soon. But for now, come on, she's holding a 3DS, she's just like me for real. After changing out of our pajamas, we step right outside and get greeted with some new faces. Yeah, as seen here, this game isn't afraid to bust out fully proportioned 3D models too. And with them, alongside actually being able to play with the camera, everything about this intro just feels that tiny bit more impactful. These are our neighbors, Caleb and Shauna. And the fast pace keeps coming, with Shauna saying they came to get us since we're going to get a Pokemon. It's simple, it's to the point, it doesn't have any fluff, and that's almost to its detriment, really. Even compared to the other games where, oh wow, I wonder what the surprise could be. There's at least some minuscule build-up given there. Whereas this feels kind of sterile and bland. We are going to get a Pokemon! Yeah, I'd hope so. At least our starting town is pretty unique. Not much in it, but instead of the past 5 regions had given us, it's more of a townhouse we're living in, making for a unique vibe. Anyway, we head out through the front gate, starting our journey on Route 1 Vanderbilt Pathway. And that was Route 1, Vanderbilt Pathway. Yeah, there's no reason for this to be called Route 1, it only exists for a trailer shot. But hey, it is a nice looking shot, we'll give them that. But it also does show us that the camera is capable of doing these things during the gameplay, and that is worth noting. Upon stepping foot into Aquacord Town, we're called over to sit with our neighbors, alongside some new faces, Tierno and Trevor. And it's probably best to address the elephant in the room right away. These characters aren't very popular. Or very good. See, the idea of there being multiple rivals has always been a dicey one ever since, well, this game. It's not a bad thing by default, but of the 4 rivals you have, Shauna, Trevor, Tierno, and either Calum or Serena based on whichever character you chose, none of them are compelling or even the slightest bit interesting. Shauna is the kind of exception here, having a handful of pretty nice character moments and even getting the tiniest bit of an arc, but she's the only one with any degree of depth at all. And even then, the game does not give her the focus she so desperately deserves. Calum/Serena is the single most generic rival character ever, having no goal aside from becoming strong without even a personality to back it up. And also, as the rivals, they don't have the hats for some reason. Calum looks bald. And Trevor and Tierno are practically the same person, journeying for their own reasons. Trevor wanting to fill in the Pokédex and Tierno working to build the perfect Pokemon team for dancing. Hell yeah, I can respect that, Godspeed. They more or less just exist to fill out the roster. But honestly, part of their mass hatred comes from a degree of misunderstanding from plenty of people. And that's that these people aren't really supposed to be your rivals, save for Calum or Serena. And no, I don't care about what Masters says. This isn't a Sword and Shield situation where you're actively competing against a couple of other trainers. No, this is supposed to be a friend group. The 5 of you are setting out on this adventure alongside each other. A group of kids tackling the world. And hey, at its core, that's kind of what Pokemon is. Now that doesn't save them from being super bland and boring, but looking at them through this lens makes them at least, well, a little more tolerable. And this is accentuated through your nickname. Yeah, you're essentially given a second name entry that your friends will refer to you with sometimes. It's pretty cute. And in fact, when I was playing this game as a kid for the first time, as my first Pokemon game actually, I named myself Master, so it was like I was the ruler of them. What the fuck was my problem? And now it's time for our starters, Chespin, Fennekin, and Froakie. A lineup that's kinda controversial overall thanks to Froakie turning into Charizard 2 and Chespin being public enemy number 1 for zero reason, but overall a pretty good trio here all things considered. Plus their final evolutions are all inspired by different JRPG classes, which is neat. And with us going for Fennekin, Nick Wilde joins the party. And on top of that, we get our Pokédex right away, alongside a letter from the professor to give to our mom. But before we can actually do that, we're stopped by Shauna, who challenges us to our first battle. And, you know, despite all the heated discussion around how 3D Pokemon battles look, with some of the criticisms being kind of valid, honestly, for their first time doing them in a full-fledged mainline game, they look pretty good. Hell, I'd argue Gen 6s still look alright now, if we ignore the repercussions they had going forward. The models look nice and perfectly well on model, if not a little lifeless during some of their idle animations. That's mainly down to the posing, with so many of them just standing upright facing straight forwards. Though all the other animations are still decently expressive, mainly for the moves. This battle background of Horde Town looks really nice, and this is also where they really started playing with the camera to make everything more cinematic, including the attacks. Again, it's nothing groundbreaking, and you could absolutely argue that Colosseum and stuff did it better, but still, coming off of Black and White, it feels like the next step up. And also, the cameraman isn't swaying around drunk anymore. The fight is pretty easy though, especially since we start with a super effective move this time. Hey, there's even a little victory animation for your trainer this time around. See, that's charm right there. We give the letter to our mom, and after a quick goodbye from her and her Rhyhorn, we can set out for real. Crossing the bridge onto Route 2 with another great camera angle. Seriously, they did all this cool camera stuff for like one game and nothing else. And we're hit with a catching tutorial. Yeah, for how relatively quickly this game got into things, they didn't really ease up on the tutorials very much. But hey, at least throwing a Pokeball's from a POV angle now, it's like we're really there. Also, this route is very nothing, just a straight line, but with grass on it this time. Also, fun fact, but on this route only, your captures are all guaranteed, so you can have all the Pidgey you want. But at the tail end of the route, things immediately get way more interesting with Santalune Forest. Pretty bold to have such a complex area, a proper dungeon so early on, especially in a modern Pokemon game. But it's not exactly original, as it's almost a one-to-one copy of Kanto's Viridian Forest. And it's not even just layout-wise either, even the encounter table is more or less the same thing, including the rare Pikachu encounter. Only adding the elemental monkeys and the new regional bug, Scatterbug. It's honestly a pretty nice tribute, especially since, again, this is the first 3D game. Having such an iconic area remade in literally a whole new angle is super cool. But it's also pretty concerning foreshadowing, highlighting an aspect of these games that, oh, we'll get there when we get there. Oh yeah, we catch our next party member too. Vivian learns Quiver Dance eventually, and I'm not passing on that opportunity, so welcome 812. considering we're technically still in the tutorial, this area has zero challenge at all, with Shauna offering to heal all our Pokemon at any time. But hey, I guess that reinforces the whole friend thing a bit more, alongside just seeing them going about their business during the dungeon, battling or looking for their own Pokemon, and it culminates with everyone meeting up at the end and walking out together. Whereas, again, bland as some of these guys are, the dynamic here is something super fun and unique. In concept, but hey, that's gotta count for something. Right outside, everyone establishes their goals for their journey in a very upfront way, and we're straight on to Route 3. It's very standard, just having a handful of trainers scattered across it. So before long, we find ourselves in Santalune City. And with this being the first proper city, there's a fair amount of stuff here, like a full-on Pokemon Center, and most notably for Pokemon X and Y, a boutique. For the first time in the series, we have proper full-on character customization. And while sure, it is still pretty limited thanks to this being the first time they did it, there's still a decent variety of options, mainly later on in the game. You can buy a whole bunch of different things: hats, bags, shirts, pants, accessories for your hats. A handful of options are pretty annoyingly locked to certain days of the week though, especially since this is one of those games that punishes you for changing the system clock. So sorry, you will have to be patient to buy Zipped Jacket Green. Alongside that, a little bit later in Lumiose City, there's also a salon that lets you customize your hair. And see, this is where your character choice kind of starts to matter. The female character just has infinitely more customization options than the male. And sure, that is the case in other games too, but try more than double the amount of clothing. Serena has 205 different pieces of clothing, while Caleb has a pitiful 102. And that's not just down to there being more clothing options for the girl, because she also gets an entirely new type of clothing with the dresses. Plus, at the salon, Kaylin gets a mere 4 hairstyle options total, while Serena gets 6, plus customization options for the bangs. Of course, the options for both characters are good, but the sheer imbalance is just funny. And hey, I'd rather it be unfair than whatever the hell Scarlet and Violet had going on. Though there is still more to do in Santalune City, it's worth noting that to the right we find Route 22. Another pretty basic and linear one, but this one actually leads straight to Victory Road right off the bat. Naturally, we can't get in yet since we have nothing, but hey, that gives us something to look forward to. And coincidentally, the exact same thing happened in Kanto, with Route 22 being next to one of the first cities also connecting to Victory Road. Okay, no more dilly-dallying. The main attraction is Santalune Gym, which we can't enter yet thanks to a skater blocking the entrance. She battles us, and it's no problem at all, so immediately after, we're gifted with the roller skates. And now movement just became infinitely more fun. Using the 3DS's circle pad automatically activates the roller skates, letting you glide around super fast. It's totally just an excuse to utilize the circle pad, as well as being yet another thing they can only do in 3D, but that's not a bad thing. They're just flat out fun to zoom around with, even with some extra unlockable tricks you can pull off just because. All that being said though, they are a little slippery and very unruly, especially in tighter spaces. But if anything, that's a positive, since it gives them a reason to exist alongside the standard D-pad movement instead of being a replacement. I don't get how or why, but Pokemon X and Y, of all games, managed to make even the basic movement interesting. More importantly though, we now have access to the gym, this one specializing in bug types, if you somehow couldn't tell. You just have to navigate your way across this web, with the big dew droplets flat out showing you which way to go. The main point of this is pretty clearly just to show off the diagonal movement, since that was something new at the time, but hey, it does work. Though it is kind of a bummer how the whole photo studio theme gets completely dropped after the entrance. That's a considerably more unique concept that could have easily lended itself to a gym puzzle that, well, is actually gameplay. God damn it, Rotom Dex, you were one generation too late. And at the end, we of course meet the gym's leader, Viola. And there's really not much more to it than to kick off our first gym battle. Man, it might just be a piece of 2D art, but there's a surprising amount of energy in the air here. Barring the new 3D presentation, albeit with some very nice backgrounds, this game's gym battles are as standard as ever. But it is worth noting the music here. See, X and Y as a whole don't really have the best battle themes. They're fine enough, but none really stand out that much. But that being said, they decided to make the gym battle theme a techno song? I mean, it sounds alright, not really that catchy, but good in the moment. Why though? Anyway, Viola herself is actually decently challenging for a first gym leader. Relatively, at least. The Sursk gets nothing special, but a full-on Vivillon is pretty tough for so early in the game. Not helped by the fact it has Infestation, whittling your health down each turn. Now granted, it is still baby easy, but again, compared to other first gyms, this is quite a bit to throw at you. Maybe this game is a little challenging after all. Foreshadowing is a literary device in which, with that, we beat Viola and get ourselves the Bug Badge. And that's our business in this town done. Though when we try to continue north to Route 4, we're interrupted by her sister, Alexa, who gives us the EXP Share. Yeah, this is easily one of the biggest points of contention surrounding Pokemon X and Y and the series going forward. Starting from this game onwards, once you receive this item, your entire party receives experience points after every battle. Or starting in Let's Go, you don't even need the item and you can't turn it off either, because why would you want to do that? On one hand, party-wide experience is great. It can help tone down on grinding and, in Pokemon's case specifically, alleviate the need for switch training, which is just not fun to do. Hell, most RPGs now just share the experience across the party by default. And even if they don't have exactly that, there's usually some kind of option to level up party members who are falling behind. But then on the flip side, there's the argument that training up your Pokemon without them actually battling feels unearned. Or the far bigger issue, the huge amount of XP spread across the entire team makes the game far too easy, purely thanks to overleveling. See though, that doesn't necessarily have to be an issue with the EXP share. Like, the Alola games are pretty widely considered to be some of the more challenging Pokemon entries, and they have the exact same EXP share mechanics as Gen 6, and it works purely because the game is balanced around it. Meanwhile, X and Y aren't balanced around it. With the EXP share on and fighting an average amount of optional trainer battles, you'll almost always be at least slightly overleveled to the point where you can sweep everything you come across. But the balancing is also in that weird range where if you turn it off, you'll oftentimes end up very slightly underleveled. And with all that being said, what if I told you the EXP share isn't even the worst case of this game's lack of difficulty? Oh god, don't tell me, these games are for children? Finally actually making progress though, we're on to Route 4. And here's where Kalos' routes start getting way more interesting, with this one mostly being a clean path, but also with hedge gardens off to the side, complete with flowers instead of tall grass to really sell the more domesticated look. And hey, considering this is right after we got the roller skates, these blocky mazes could be another showcase of how the D-pad is still a viable movement option. To hell with that though. Halfway through the route, there's even this really nice looking fountain, making for a great set piece tying everything together. Passing by a few more hedges and trainers, we bump into two rather dashing individuals who explain the newly classified fairy type to us, even very bluntly saying it turns type matchups on their heads. Sure, this seems pretty silly in retrospect, but at the time, fairy was indeed a game changer. With just how hard it was to counter other dragon-type Pokemon in Gen 5 and earlier, having a brand new type be introduced almost entirely just to check dragon types was pretty massive. So this, even though it's kind of just exposition, is a really fun way to establish it. These two soon after introduce themselves as Professor Sycamore's assistants, Dexio and Cena. And they're gonna guide us to his lab, which is found within Lumiose City, an absolutely massive, densely packed locale with tons to do, and we're still in the tutorial, aren't we? Yeah, one of Kalos' biggest claims to fame, to the point where it's the central location of its own video game, is almost entirely blocked off until way later on. Well, that does give us something to look forward to at least, even if the construction workers are fat liars. Though it should be noted how janky the camera is here. Absolutely no fault on Game Freak this time though. This system has one stick and one D-pad, both of which being mapped to movement here, and I guess later there was the nipple. We don't talk about the nipple. Well, with no other options really, we step into the lab to meet Professor Sycamore in the flesh. Then Shauna and Calum enter, and now Sycamore wants to battle? I don't understand the progression there, but battle we do. Sycamore says he's not that tough, and yeah, but at least it's kind of interesting with him using the 3 Kanto starters. And hell, after we beat him, he gives us one of the Kanto starters. Yeah, a second starter Pokemon before even the second gym, no strings attached. Well, when these games were new, this was pretty hype, mainly because at the time, starters were still kind of elusive, especially compared to how they are now. But in hindsight, well yeah, it is still pretty cool. But this is not only another thing that contributes to the game not being very hard, but your new Kanto starter kind of overshadows your Kalos starter a bit, especially considering... Oh, just like that, huh? Sure, we'll have to wait a bit to actually Mega Evolve them, but all this means is that your secondary Kanto starter is going to end up stronger than your main starter at some point. And you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that was on purpose. But all that being said, I'm not turning down a free Bulbasaur, so Adachi gets added to our party. With Tierno and Trevor arriving, and after some words of encouragement, Sycamore properly introduces to us the concept of Mega Evolution. Okay, well, he doesn't properly introduce anything. In fact, he says it's something that we should investigate ourselves, but hey, that is a goal to work towards. And we're even told to go to Camphrier Town next, thanks to how much history it allegedly has. It's pretty basic storytelling stuff in all honesty, but just setting Mega Evolution up like this as a tangible goal for us to work towards really does a lot. Cherish this while we still have it. But before we finally head out, he imparts some final words of wisdom onto us. Accept the ways of living that sometimes conflict with your own. Pokemon X and Y's themes are very much in your face, but also pretty profound and thoughtful, especially for a Pokemon game. It's all about finding harmony despite differences, and more specifically, finding beauty in those differences. Now, the whole beauty aspect is a little more underplayed in the story, but in interviews, Junichi Masuda has very clearly said that beauty is the main theme of the game, and in a fun meta way, that's kind of why the visuals are such a big focus this time around, and why, even this early in the game, we've already had tons of set pieces that exist purely to show off the beauty of the world around us. And we are going to be seeing all of those themes a lot more as the game goes on. Like, we haven't even met Mabel yet, be patient. With all that done, we're back in the lobby just about ready to step out. Though before we get to do that, we bump into Sina again, talking to a very intimidating red man, who introduces himself as Lysander. And he's the villain of the story. The game doesn't even try to make it subtle. Alongside Calum, we bump into him again immediately after this at a cafe where he's talking to the movie star Diantha, but he's already saying some really messed up stuff right off the bat, asking if she wants to be beautiful and play the same roles forever. And when she says no, he retorts with, "Isn't it your duty to be forever beautiful?" And as if that wasn't enough, he flat out says, "I would make this world unchanging so beauty lasts forever." And that's just because we're playing X. In Y, he flat out says he would end the world. Sure man, go off. That's like if when you met Chairman Rose for the first time, he said, remember Galar's darkest day? Maybe that wasn't so bad. Anyway, yeah, we are properly introduced to Diantha here, who says she hopes we'll battle at some point in the future. And last in this barrage of cutscenes, we get a call from Tierno on our Holocaster saying to meet on Route 5. With the Holocaster pretty much just being this game's resident phone item, though apparently these were invented by Lysander. I wonder if that plot point will go anywhere. We do unlock more of Lumiose City here, but upon walking into a fancy clothing store and immediately being kicked out for being lame, it's abundantly clear that we should probably come back later when the area opens up fully, so for now, on to Route 5. But not quite yet though, because in the gate connecting to it, a dashing pink man stops us. Mr. Bonning here unlocks O-Powers for us, little buffs we can just use while playing the game. Be it more money, speeding up eggs hatching, or even flat out giving you buffs during battle. And they're very easily activated on the PSS on the bottom screen. Oh yeah, that's been there this whole time! And if you wanted, you could even send O-Powers to friends, and the more times you use them, the stronger they'd get. Granted, the whole sharing aspect doesn't really work when the servers are, closed, but at the time, these really were part of what made the PSS so special. And speaking of, it's worth mentioning now that the PSS was the best online connectivity in any Pokemon game. It just works. It's very simple and well organized, and it's all relegated to the bottom screen, so at any time during your adventure, you could just send or receive requests to battle or trade and they wouldn't interrupt you at all. And then, the Festival Plaza happened, but... Okay, now on to Route 5 proper, where we're interrupted by another person again. Or rather, a Lucario this time, belonging to Corinna here. It seems to like us, she says we'll battle later, and that's kind of it. This game really just loves to stop you for no reason, huh? Route 5 proper though, now that's interesting. Pretty basic for the most part, but it's also got a skate park with it showing off some new skating mechanics, namely the grind rails. I don't know, they're just scattered across the region and they're pretty fun to use. A tiny extra layer to the navigation in this game. Partway through the route, we, bump into Trevor and Tierno. That's never the sign of a good story, when characters just come in because they do. Well, we battle Tierno, and all he has is a single level 12 Corphish. But hey, right after that, it's right back to the interesting stuff, with Trevor introducing us to Horde Battles, being one of the coolest things to come out of Gen 6. Man, what a roller coaster of emotions. Sometimes when you get into a wild encounter, or always if you use Sweet Scent or Honey, you'll find yourself against 5 wild Pokemon. Aside from the sheer amount of enemies though, they're pretty standard wild encounters, with the only real caveat being that you can't throw Pokeballs if there's more than one enemy on the field. In some specific areas and encounters with specific Pokemon, they use this as a chance to show how they might interact in nature a little bit. Like in a horde of Trevenant, there might be a Sudowoodo trying to blend in. Or if, say, a Seviper shows up in a horde of Zangoose, the different species will fight against one another. But honestly, without having any moves that hit all the opponents, especially this early in the game, these are more of an inconvenience than anything, spending up to 5 turns on a random wild battle for practically no reward. But later on in the game, these are not only great for training EVs since you're getting so many at once, but also what's probably their biggest appeal, the shiny hunting. Just simply by encountering 5 Pokemon at once, you do have a higher chance to come across one. That being said though, this is far from the best shiny hunting method in the game. Oh, just you wait and see. Passing by a few more trainers and tall flowers, we find ourselves in Camphrier Town. God damn it. All this message says is thanks for using the holocaster. Why the f is this here? Another very basic place. Hell, it has 2 houses. But the outer walls and giant castle do give it some identity. Speaking of Chabonneau Castle, that's our next stop, where we're ready to learn about some sweet, sweet lore. And while sadly we and Shauna don't learn anything about Mega Evolution in here, we are told about some of the castle's history, mainly that the castle's owners gave everything they owned away, hence why it's so empty. Okay, it's not much, quite literally, but it is more world building, and that's always nice to see. However, we're soon interrupted by the tour guide being summoned to Route 7, so we naturally follow suit, where we're immediately hit with another Kanto reference with a Snorlax blocking the path, needing the Poké-Flute to wake it up. You at least could have changed the instrument this time, make it a guitar or something, I don't know. Look, there's nothing wrong with fan service. But also, we're only 1 badge in, and we've seen so many Kanto references, be it big or small. Just like the choice of a Kanto starter kind of overshadowed Nick Wilde, all of these Kanto references kind of add up to make Kalos' identity a little weaker than it really should be. Though to be fair, we are still early in the game, and right now we're told to head to Parfum Palace found on Route 6 to find the Poké-Flute. There's a path that leads either up or down. Oh god damn it, not another cutscene! This is the berry field, which we're promptly told to start working at. Oh, but I don't want to be employed! This is Pokemon X and Y's way of doing berries, a la the soil patches in Hoenn or the Poképelago in Alola, but this one is shockingly really in-depth. On the surface, it does seem pretty standard. You plant berries, which you typically find at these berry trees scattered around the region, with a mere 1 falling off every 7 days, my god. But oh, that's not even half of it. There's a composter here too, where by putting in different berries, you'll get different types of mulch to put on your plants, with the mulch's effects boiling down to giving you more berries. But there's also berry mutation. By planting 2 different berries next to each other, there's a chance that when they grow, they'll mutate a new berry on one of the plants. And the berries that can appear this way are also exclusive to mutation. And the berries you get aren't random either. It's almost like berry breeding in a way. Oh, come on, this one's got a bad nature. But oh, that's still not all. This is a garden, and in a garden, you have to take care of weeding and pests, which are mechanics here too. It's frankly impressive just how much was put into this one side area for one activity, especially considering how in most games, caring for berries boils down to... Comparatively, the berry fields are way more like a responsibility. Oh. Now on the path just north of the berry farm is Route 6, where the game progresses. Just looking at it, it's evidently another visual showcase. And off to the sides, we can see mazes of tall grass that are only accessible on the return trip, so that's something to look forward to. It's practically nothing gameplay-wise, just being a straight line with 2 trainers on it, but visually, it's pretty alright. I'll be totally honest, this game isn't always a looker, with plenty of areas feeling a bit static or empty, and lots of the colors are pretty washed out, making everything feel kind of overcast all the time. And here I thought Galar was the one based on England. But it's far from being totally unappealing, especially in areas like this. At the end of the route lies Parfum Palace itself, looking very fancy and regal. We're forced to cough up 1,000 Poké-Dollars to get inside, and once we do, we overhear someone who's lost their Furfrou. Though before handling that, there is, an entire palace to explore. It's nothing crazy layout-wise, but it's a super unique set piece, being disgustingly lavish, hiding a couple items and being filled with NPCs talking about pieces of the palace's history. Yet another nice case of pretty irrelevant but also neat world building, with everything surrounding a 300-year-old war that Kalos was in, which is never brought up again. And before you go, actually, this 300-year-old war and the big 3,000-year-old war are, as far as we know, completely different and unrelated things. But then there's also this portrait with a whole heap of implications, but this is also X and Y, so I don't know. And hey, fun fact, Parfum Palace is very directly based on the Palace of Versailles in real life. And one of that palace's most defining features is the courtyard that made it over here too. It's appropriately pretty nice looking, having statues of Reshiram and Zekrom, plus the hedges you can run through are laid out in the shapes of Pyroar, Chandelure, and Solrock. It's one of the more memorable side areas in the game, even if just from a thematic standpoint. At the back of the courtyard, us and Shauna find the aforementioned Furfrou, and we're tasked with trapping it in this tiny maze. It's a very simple puzzle, but also super unique. The Furfrou keeps running away from us, so to block its paths, we can ask Shauna to sit in one of these 3 spots to sort of corral it into a dead end. You know, when I was a little kid doing this puzzle for the very first time, it took way too long because, well, I was stupid. While playing it, I was jumping up and down on my bed like any 8-year-old would. And during that, the cartridge somehow popped out of my 3DS, so I lost like 2 hours of progress and cried. Probably my finest moment as a Pokemon fan right there. Anyway, we retrieved the Furfrou, and as celebration, we're invited to a fireworks show alongside Shauna. We didn't do very much, so it kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere, but it's still a cute moment with Shauna reaffirming our friendship. Or, alternatively, you could even interpret it as a blossoming romance, especially considering what she says if you're playing as Calum. So it's too bad nothing really comes of it. It is a really sweet character moment, and just being able to have this one-on-one scene with Shauna really endears you to her more than anyone else in this game. So it's a shame that the rest of the time the game isn't interested in stuff like this. Or at least until it's f***ing over. Well, with that over with, we get our hands on the Pokéflute, the whole reason we came here in the first place. Though out of nowhere, Shauna asks the butler of all people if he's aware of Mega Evolution for some reason. And shockingly, he is, revealing that it involves a trainer using a stone. Okay, it's not much, but it's something. And hey, on our way back through Route 6 through all the tall grass, we encounter some new Pokemon like Honedge, with one of them even joining our party as Numa. Anyway, back at the Snorlax, the Black Belt plays the flute, it opens its eyes, sure, and initiates a battle. This guy's shockingly kinda tough though, or at least pretty bulky. Same reasons as Viola's Vivillon really. For so early in the game, these stats are something to be reckoned with. And this guy is also the only Pokemon you battle in the entire game to have a guaranteed held item. Not counting Mega Stones, of course. Sheesh, move over, champion. But after dealing with all of that, the rest of Route 7 is finally open to us. And man, this place is super busy. First the Snorlax, then the berry fields, and now we're being hit with a tutorial for the daycare, which might explain why the route looks like, you know, this. But hey, looks-wise, it's still nice. Running along a river with, again, a unique camera angle to show that off. It really is crazy how after this game and Oras, they just didn't play with the camera anymore. Oh, but there's still more attractions here, namely the Battle Chateau. It's like, kind of a sort of battle facility, but it's much more like its own thing, almost like a dedicated area for grinding. You know, if you'd need that, I guess. Random trainers show up here over time, and you just do battle with them as normal. And this is also the only place where you can do rematches with the gym leaders, with most of them having super scuffed movesets like shoutout Valerie's Mawile, generational moveset right here. But that's not the main gimmick of this place, since as you fight more trainers, you earn points to increase your rank, and the higher rank you are, the more powerful trainers there are. But the grind to get to the max rank of Grand Duke or Grand Duchess is frankly absurd, with them needing a whopping 1,000 points. Meanwhile, the most points you can get from a single battle is from an Elite Four member at 8. And even then, they only start appearing at 300 points. It's also worth noting that there are these things called writs you can do here, either adding more trainers to the chateau or increasing their levels. They cost lots of money, but don't really benefit you in any way other than just making grinding slightly faster. And all this is infamously in the game that doesn't make you grind anyway. It's a neat distraction, a footnote, and nothing more. And right after the Battle Chateau, Calum says the two of us should battle Trevor and Tierno. Yes, it is that abrupt, it just happens. As you may have noticed, that's a pretty obnoxious constant in this game. Things just like happen with no reason to them. This whole sequence is literally, no joke, you walk up to Calum, he says, okay, let's battle. Tierno and Trevor, you'll battle against Player and me. I thought these would be good teams since you and I are neighbors. It's nothing, a battle for the sake of a battle, which, by the way, is against a Pikachu, Corphish, and Flabebe. Oh, but wait, it's an orange Flabebe. Oh, I'm quaking in my boots. Sure, there are plenty of other Pokemon games where you get stopped out of nowhere a lot, but those do tend to give you some pieces of new info, or at the very, very least, fun character interactions. But here, the characters are so astronomically bland that they don't get even that. Oh yeah, by the way, after the battle, Calum just says, well, that was fun, time to move on. That's good writing. It's not even something that just happens with the friend group either. Half the interactions in this game are just someone appearing because it's time for them to appear. It's tiring, it's boring, and it only gets worse as the game goes on. But something that's not boring is Connecting Cave, lying at the end of Route 7. Okay, that's a lie, it's literally just a transition area. Route 8. Right off the bat, Dexio and Cena appear to upgrade our Pokédex. Alongside the Central Kalos Dex, we now have the Coastal Kalos Dex. And this is a pretty unique choice, flat out having multiple Pokédexes in one region. The closest thing that compares is probably all the different dexes for Alola's Islands, but this isn't just some weird stylistic choice. No, it's rather because the Kalos Pokédex is so big that for the sake of organization, multiple Pokédexes are almost necessary. X and Y's regional dex is to this day the single biggest Pokédex in the entire series. Not counting if you add on the DLC to Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet, because that would be cheating. It touts a whopping 454 species, not counting the 3 Kalos mythicals either. And that number isn't just for show. Each route in Kalos, even this early in the game, has so many mons on it. I already mentioned way back in Santalune Forest it having 3 different bug types, the 3 elemental monkeys, and Pikachu. But even here on Route 8, for example, we can find Absol, Zangoose and Seviper, Wingull, Inkay, Drifloon, Mienfoo, Spoink, hell, even Bagon. There's so much varied availability in this region at almost every point, and the selection is almost always great too. And on the topic of Route 8, it's another goodie. Get used to hearing that, this region has some pretty solid routes. Granted, right now we're only on half of it with the rest of it being below, but hey, that's a super sick visual, so it's fine here. But even just this first bit has its own stuff going on. A bunch of ledges to navigate down, plus these unique rocks to hop across, restricting your movement. Still not quite on the level of Univa's balance beams though, come on, look at that face. Before long, we're in Ambrette Town, a more mountainous place with a few landmarks, like the aquarium that leads down to the beach and also has no fish in it. Man, at least put a picture to make me feel better. But more importantly, what we're here for right now, the Fossil Lab. We ask about Mega Evolution, and despite apparently knowing who we are, we're just told that it uses mysterious stones again. So we're told to go find the lab assistant who actually knows about that kind of stuff, with them apparently being in Glittering Cave. Oh, you know those scientists with their mining expeditions. We have to traverse Route 9 to get there, and it's one of the most unique routes just, in general. Instead of simply walking it, we hop on a Rhyhorn to cross the jagged, rocky terrain. And it's pretty cool how this circles back around to our mom of all things. Remember her pet Rhyhorn that was in front of the house? Well, there's a whole bit that comes up a few times about her being a world-famous Rhyhorn racer. It's an added bit of character given to the player's family that nobody would ever expect. Though to be fair, Black and White 2 did it first and also better, but you know. Babe, wake up, new mom lore just dropped! The route layout itself isn't super complex, at most having rocks for Rhyhorn to smash through, and it also doesn't control very well, having weird, almost tank controls. But for a neat one-time route gimmick, that doesn't really matter. And of course, lying at the end of the route, the main attraction, Glittering Cave, is far more special. So it's already been mentioned time and time again how this game loves playing with the camera and how later Pokemon games just don't for some reason, unless you count clipping through the floor as playing with it. And that is exactly what makes Glittering Cave so special. It makes the camera position its own gimmick. Now the layout isn't very complex, being a straight line in the most literal possible sense. But the unique over-the-shoulder camera makes it genuinely easy to get lost if you end up taking a wrong turn. Plus, with it being so close behind your character with nothing but inky black darkness in front of you, it can feel genuinely claustrophobic and unnerving, not knowing when something or someone might jump out at you. But despite that being the most interesting part of the cave, it doesn't last too long. Finding ourselves in a more open room, we bump into one very snazzy individual, introducing himself as part of Team Flare. A team that, in this guy's own words, wants to make themselves happy without caring about other people or Pokemon. You could not make them more blunt about being the villains if you tried. And that's really all the motivation we get from them here. We do fight some more grunts further in, including in a multi-battle with Kalom, but all we really learn is that they're trying to steal fossils to get money, just like Team Rocket and Kanto. But after all that chaos is dealt with, we do find the assistant at the end, who didn't even know Team Flare were there. That doesn't really make for great stakes, but hey, we are offered a fossil to choose between Jaw and Sail, with the resulting Tyrant and Amora being pretty cool fossil Pokemon. Kinda surprising it took until Gen 6 to do dinosaurs finally. Just, don't look at what Auroras, is. Before we're fully back on track though, there is a little bit more of Route 9 to check out, featuring our very first Sky Trainer. There are a couple of these guys scattered around the region, and upon approaching them, they'll offer a Sky Battle. And Sky Battles... yeah, no, this ain't it. They're a fun idea, but functionally they're just standard battles, but more restrictive. There's a handful of certain moves that just flat out can't be used in these. But more importantly, and more infamously, you're stuck using certain Pokemon too, being the ones that can either fly or levitate. But it's not that simple, since a Pokemon is only actually eligible if their idle animation has them flying or levitating. Plus Arceus, because they're just cool like that, I guess. Pokemon like Fletchling very obviously can fly, but since during battle in this game it's standing on the ground, it's not eligible for Sky Battles. Same thing with Gengar, where even though it has Levitate and has been shown to levitate, it's not levitating right here, so no dice. And this whole thing about the idle animations is pretty much the only reason Sky Battles are even remembered now, since in order to make some Pokemon eligible, they were condemned to hovering awkwardly in place. And that completely ruined the look of some of these guys, like come on Tropius, get down from there! And it took 9 whole years before Scarlet and Violet finally changed these on a large scale. And to add insult to injury, there's only 16 Sky Battles in the entire game, all of which you can flat out decline. So that begs the question, why? And why did they feel the need to make so many Pokemon fly to accommodate these specifically? Well, according to Junichi Masuda in an interview, they were added because these games are, well, 3D. With the Pokemon up in the sky like this, the camera's even more free to whip itself around and get dynamic angles. And also, apparently the idea of a trainer shouting commands up to their Pokemon was cool too? I mean, sure, but that doesn't really translate to the game at all. And then the punchline to all of this is that Oras, released the next year, also had battles in the sky, but there, a wind platform just appears under any Pokemon. No, you don't get it, they were totally worth 9 years of this. Upon finally returning to Ambrette Town, we don't even have to go to the fossil lab. And in fact, that assistant that we saved doesn't actually say anything about megas at all. So that tiny thread of this little mega plotline just ends completely unceremoniously. But hey, one of the guys does give us the Aerodactylite out of nowhere, so that has to count for something, right? Upon passing through the town's aquarium and getting ourselves the Old Rod, we're on the lower part of Route 8, which is pretty uneventful in all honesty, just having a couple trainers scattered around. The most exciting thing here is that there's a sign that tells you about Rock Smash behind a Rock Smash rock. Damn, now that's some kind of game design. So now we're in Silent City. It's for the most part a pretty bog-standard coastal town, but with the cool addition of a bike track running around the place. Note the uniquely paved roads and the pathing in the sand. So it's pretty appropriate that we also get our bike here. And heck, we can even choose a color for it, just for a tiny added bit of customization. Though our options are green and yellow of all things. Aw, come on, where's the Glaucus option? There's also a trade with an NPC in this town that's particularly notable. An ace trainer in the Pokemon Center offers up an entire Steelix for a Love Disc. And considering Love Disc are incredibly common, being the only thing the Old Rod can fish up at this point in the game, so, I guess we have a guest party member now. Say hi to Thumper! And perfect timing too, because we also meet Grant, the Rock-type gym leader. He gives us the HM for strength and invites us over to the gym. Yeah, remember that? How we were doing gyms? There's just a massive gap between the first and second gyms here. Like, okay, this script is about 180 pages long, and the Viola fight was about 35 pages ago. Maybe that says more about my pacing than anything, but it's also not great for the game, since from Route 4 all the way until now, we've kind of just been doing things as we come across them. And while that's not necessarily bad, like we have been getting story beats along the way, it ends up making the game's pacing as a whole feel really lopsided, since after this point, it's relatively back-to-back gyms. Now you see, that's actually a subtle reference to Sword and Shield's bad pacing. But hey, the Silent City gym was worth the wait. Depending on who you ask and whether or not that person is a liar. Okay, but it's not bad. It's a giant pillar we have to scale up using these rock walls. Admittedly, it's still not a puzzle or anything, it's just about getting to the end. But not only does the presentation spice it up a bit, but you're also navigating around the pillar, meaning you have to be a bit more aware of your space. The game's in 3D now if you couldn't tell. And as for Gym Leader Grant himself, he actually does have a pretty decent thing going on with his team. It is just the 2 Kalos fossil Pokemon, but on their own they do make for a solid challenge. But it should also be noted that we have Thumper the Steelix with us, and yeah. With the Cliff Badge obtained, we can proceed north to Route 10. And somehow, even 10 routes in, it's another unique place. With this one being covered in strange stones, all arranged in a pattern. And hell, a backpacker here even reveals that they have some kind of mysterious energy, with him being told that by Colress from Black and White 2. Man, remember when all these games had continuity? Where the hell did Looker go? Is he okay? Oh, but more importantly, this route has Eevee, one of which we catch, thus adding Urbane to our party. You know, this was also the generation that added Sylveon, which was a pretty big deal at the time. And how exactly does one get Sylveon? Well, on the bottom screen, alongside the PSS, there's Pokemon-Amie. It's a brand new, more personal way to interact with your little guys. And it was huge. So huge to the point that in every Pokemon game after, there was some kind of derivative or equivalent to it. And of those derivatives, Sword and Shield wins because it gave us Leon Ball. Describing it doesn't really do it justice. You kinda just pet your Pokemon alongside feeding them Pokepuffs to increase your affection levels. But trust me when I say, this was a game changer. Before, you were kind of always the boss of them. I threw a Gachapon capsule at God, so yes, it is under my dominion now. But here, you're able to hang out with them like they're pets, and it's really cute. Plus, it makes it way easier than ever before to get properly attached to a Pokemon. And it helps just how in-depth and shockingly detailed the interaction is. Every species has spots on their body they prefer to be pet on, and some even have places they hate. Plus, if you touch certain spots on some mons, they will affect you. Like touching any of the electric rodent's cheek pouches will shock you. Most fire types can very easily burn you. Ghost types can show you the horrors, it's great. Hell, sometimes if the 3DS camera catches a glimpse of your face, not letting that happen, your Pokemon can ask you to make a certain face just for the fun of it. Whoa, how flattering. Plus, there's even 3 touchscreen minigames you can play in order to get more Pokepuffs. And they sure are minigames using the touchscreen. But what could all this be for? Well, to raise the affection stat, like I mentioned. And affection is another contributor to these games being crazy easy. The higher a Pokemon's affection, the more perks they get. It starts out with a small experience boost, but then immediately adds a built-in focus band, meaning your Pokemon can just survive a lethal attack sometimes. Then they get the ability to decide to get rid of status conditions if they want. Then finally, they'll end up getting naturally higher evasion and an increased critical hit rate. Now that might sound bad, and no it's not, it's too good, that's the issue. But it takes quite a while to max out affection, so you usually don't have to worry about accidentally being too overpowered from playing with your team. That is until later games combine happiness with affection, so you'll be getting those powerful boosts anyway. Uh-oh. Though it is worth noting that in only the Gen 6 games, if your lead mon has high enough affection, you can pet them after a battle by rubbing the bottom screen. And people try to say these games are bad. And you know what? While we're here, also on the bottom screen, also making you overpowered, there's Super Training. With it, you can have your Pokemon take part in a little shooter minigame to increase any of their EVs. The closest comparison here is probably Kid Icarus Uprising of all things, though if it was way slower paced and not funny.
You mean you murdered them?
It was a simple case of distracted chariot driving. I shouldn't have been doing my hair.
You can even find punching bags to boost your mons further. Nothing required by any means, but it certainly made EV training more accessible. Even though you could just wipe out a Horde encounter for EVs, which is faster anyway, but it's fine. Partway through our jaunt on Route 10, we bump into Team Flare once more. They're not really doing much, but the first grunt does mention the stones here having something to do with some legend from 3,000 years ago, so that's worth noting. There are some more grunts further in too, but they're just kind of there, doing vaguely evil activities. Heck, you can flat out skip battling some of them too. Though once we step into Geosenge Town, one of them gives us a bit more context. They're going to use the stones on Route 10 to make the team happy. Well then, I wonder if this conspicuous structure with a very obvious door behind it is where the grunt went. As for Geosenge Town itself, it's fine, filled with rocks, and that's pretty much it. For now anyway, ooh. But what's arguably neater is that this town has a hotel, continuing the streak of X and Y having really weird one-time mechanics. There are 6 asterisk of these scattered all across the region, and every so often, the NPCs inside them will cycle out. There's one woman who gives your Pokemon ribbons cycling through the hotels every week. Mr. Bonding is there. And most notably, 6 generic NPCs that cycle through all the hotels daily. And by talking to any one of them on 4 separate days, they'll give you something. 2 of them offering different Pokemon for trade, with one being a hiker who asks for a Gyarados for his Magikarp. Okay, Mindy. And another just trading you over an Eevee for anything.
Oh shit, that's me!
Then there's the 3 that give you a couple items, with one being the strange souvenir teasing a mysterious future region. And the last one, the tourist, can give you some extra lore about the gym leaders, but only the girls? Yeah, I choose the cancel option. What the fuck is this guy's problem? But that's really all there is to this place, so we head on our way, and hi, Corinna! I'm sure you've noticed the pattern so far, so can you guess what she's going to ask us to do? It's a battle, by the way. She uses both her Lucario here, which should normally be tough. But not only are we kind of overleveled, but Nick Wilde also does this really funny thing called being fire type. Afterwards, she once again tells us she's Shallower City's gym leader, in case we forgot. And okay, good interaction. I'll say it again, this is just here for the sake of being here. Oh, it's about that time for the player to have a story battle, here you go! Though that's not the only thing to look forward to in Shallower, with Professor Sycamore calling us about the Mega Evolution Guru, who's also found there. I'll be totally honest, I'm kinda surprised the Mega Evolution arc is as clean of a through line as it is. We were given this plot point all the way back at Sycamore's lab, and it's still growing and progressing pretty steadily. Now wait, I know you might be saying, "No, Steven, isn't that just how stories work?" And yeah, it should be. Oh yeah, by the way, that call actually happens on Route 11, which in and of itself is super tiny, pretty much just being a transitory area before our next dungeon, Reflection Cave. Say what you will about X and Y, but overall its area design is pretty solid, both in terms of layout and concept, and Reflection Cave is no different. For whatever reason, it flat out bans usage of the rollerblades and the bike, though that's probably because of this place's gimmick, the mirrors that line most of the walls here. They're not only a really cool visual, but also have gameplay application, which is shown off immediately with a backpacker seeing you in the mirror's reflection and starting a battle. Plus, there are also some items tucked away behind ledges, which you can only see through the mirrors. Now, aside from all that, it is a pretty standard cave area with no puzzles or anything, but it's a good standard cave area, and that's what matters. Although, towards the end of the cave, there's a mysterious secret room with its entrance hidden in a reflection, and following this tunnel all the way down brings us here. A completely unique room surrounded by rainbow crystals with a big multicolored spotlight in the middle. This place just on its own has so much mystique and intrigue. So what does it do? Nothing. No joke. It really looks like the kind of place a legendary or even a mythical Pokemon could be, but no. At most, in the post-game, there's a Mega Stone here. But this whole secret room seems kind of overkill for just that, right? And that, right there, is one of Pokemon X and Y's most infamous aspects. The Kalos region is really neat and has quite a bit of identity, but at the same time, a shocking amount of it tends to go completely unexplored or unexplained. At its worst, feeling unfinished. Now, we'll be seeing a much bigger instance of this very soon, but it's still worth noting right now as the game continues. Well, I mean, we did get Pokemon Z, so what's the problem? Well, putting all that aside for now, we end up in Shallor City before we know it. Another sort of coastal town, though this time with a bit less focus on the beach aspect, and also, you know, the giant fancy Tower of Mastery where all the Mega Evolution stuff is. But more importantly, there's a reference to Harmonite here, another Game Freak game, that's adorable. We end up meeting with Trevor and Tierno, who are apparently also told to find the Mega Evolution Guru, so looks like the group's forming back up again. On top of that, Tierno even gifts us with the intriguing stone, saying that it might even be some Mega Stone. How exciting, I wonder where this plot point will go. So towards the Tower of Mastery we head, and this place, at least on the outside, looks really cool. I've already mentioned how X and Y aren't exactly the prettiest games despite having their moments, but the architecture, and specifically the architecture, that's impressive. Places like the Tower of Mastery are so elaborate and unique looking, pretty appropriate for the whole beauty thing they've got going on. Anyway, I digress. We head inside and hey, it's Karina! And next to her we're found face to face with the Mega Evolution Guru himself, Gherkin. Gherkin! Right off the bat, he takes a look at our intriguing stone and says it's nothing more than an ordinary rock, so like, what was the point of that whole interaction? Oh, but that's actually not all for the intriguing stone, because it comes back in Oras. And there, if you bring it to Mr. Stone, he reveals that it's actually a Pidgeotite. You're telling me Gherkin is the supposed guru and he doesn't even know that? Anyway, with the rest of our friends deciding to show up, Gherkin finally starts revealing to us the secrets of Mega Evolution. It's a form of evolution, never would have guessed, that transcends all others, allowing already fully evolved Pokemon to evolve even further, albeit temporarily. And successfully doing it requires one super important component, even aside from the stones, and that's a bond between trainer and Pokemon. And also a Mega Ring for the trainer to bring it all together. Though Gherkin only has one Mega Ring left, so the 5 of us will be forced to decide amongst ourselves who will be the one to get it. This conundrum, though, actually causes some friction between the group, everyone being forced to decide whether it's worth it to— just kidding. Tierno, Shauna, and Trevor immediately decline, so it's just between us and Caleb to decide via a battle. But truthfully, all joking aside, this scene is one of the best cases of the whole friend group dynamic in action. You're all together as a part of something here, but not as rivals. Caleb, being the more competitive friend and actual rival of the bunch, actually has something to lose this time. He's fighting us for the Mega Ring instead of just because. Hell, his interest in being able to use Mega Evolution was established all the way back at Sycamore's lab. Meanwhile, our other friends simply aren't interested in that. They have their own goals they're working towards, and they know us and Caleb are the real battle-focused people in the group, so naturally, they're fine just being along for the ride. It's all super true to how a real friend group would operate. Look, these characters are still hardly, characters, but it is absolutely worth bringing up whenever something neat is actually done with them. It's like if you were hanging out with a bunch of Marnies. Oh, also, remember way back around the start when I said this? Now, for as charming as these models are, they do have their downsides, which will become apparent soon. Yeah, this scene here illustrates what I meant by that the most. That being that these models are super static. Like, no, this isn't a still image. And now it is, but you can't even tell. They don't have any idle animation, making them look pretty lifeless. Like, they're still treating them exactly like they would if they were sprites, but those were way more abstract, so here, are they okay? Anyway, as per usual, Caleb's battle is very easy, especially since he only has 3 party members still. But before we can actually get our hands on the Mega Ring, we have to head to the gym to finally take on Corinna. And after that shocking amount of build-up, this had better be worth it. Bam! Shallow Gym! Another good one here. This time based entirely around the roller skates, with it being a massive skating rink. Gym mission-wise, you simply have to beat the 4 trainers skating around the place. And while in concept that's super basic and boring, shout out Gardenia's gym from the original Diamond and Pearl. In execution, it's kind of alright. Some of the skaters move pretty quickly, so it's decently fun trying to track them down. And as for Corinna herself, she's pathetic. She is the fighting type gym leader, so of course a ghost type would have the advantage. But her team has literally nothing to counter our Numa. No, seriously, the only move she has that can damage ghost types at all is Rock Tomb on her Machoke. Also Leer, by the way! But even though we've now got the Rumble badge, we're not quite done with Corinna just yet. She asks us to come back to the Tower of Mastery for another battle, not as trainer and gym leader, but rather as equals. See, Claire, this is how you do it tastefully! Now that the stairs inside the tower are open to us, we're allowed to start climbing up. And along the way, we find some more rooms with people in them, presumably other pupils of Gherkin. Some of them even expand a bit on Mega Evolution lore a tiny bit extra, revealing that long ago, a trainer and their Lucario were the first to achieve Mega Evolution, explaining that giant statue. Now, that little tidbit doesn't make much of a difference in uncovering Mega Evolution's mysteries, but it's still neat world building either way. Until Oras immediately retconned it, but we don't talk about that. Actually, wait, no. Let's talk about that. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire rather surprisingly expand on a little bit of X and Y's lore, mainly surrounding, well, the Megas. But there, according to the Draconid lore Xerneas shares, Rayquaza was the first Pokemon to Mega Evolve. And then there's also whatever's going on with Roaring Moon if you want to count that for anything. So which of these Pokemon was the true first to Mega Evolve? We don't know. There are a couple decently satisfactory answers though. Maybe it's that Rayquaza was the first to undergo Mega Evolution, but the Lucario was the first to do it with a trainer's bond. And that works as a fine enough origin. But then way later at the tail end of the game, Sycamore says that the Kalos legendaries were responsible for it, so just throw all that away, it doesn't matter. Well, we reach the top, and as we step out into the cold night air, we're hit with a shockingly cinematic camera, with Corinna talking about how all her worries melt away while she's here. So in her eyes, this is the perfect place to finally give us the Mega Ring. And what better way to test it out than in a battle right away? Each time we met before, one of her Lucario was acting super interested in us. So now it chooses to join our party for real. And with tension in the air, we start our one-on-one Mega-on-Mega showdown. It's a pretty climactic moment, almost in a weird way, being reminiscent of the final end battle from Black and White, albeit way less important. And I got one shot by a critical hit power-up punch on the first turn, okay. Can we trade Lucario, please? Mine's effective. So thank God this battle isn't required to win to progress. And now, Mega Evolution is ours to wield. And yeah, it's pretty damn cool. If any of your Pokemon is holding their respective Mega Stone, you'll find this special button in the menu that activates their Mega form, changing their attributes. And it's really satisfying to press too. Actually, that's probably the single thing Mega Evolution does best: presentation. Not only are the designs themselves pretty solid across the board, but oh, the animation of your trainer activating their Mega Ring with a little flourish, both you and your Pokemon fading into silhouette, all before your Pokemon practically metamorphosizes into their new, upgraded form. Every time it happens, it feels like an event. This truly is hype moments in aura. And might I add, literally every piece of Mega Evolution art goes crazy hard. Now in terms of gameplay, they're really not too special, but honestly, they don't need to be. You can only Mega Evolve one Pokemon per battle, and since they have to be holding their Mega Stone to do it, Mega Evolving essentially takes away their item slot, so that's something you have to consider too. And upon Mega Evolution, a Pokemon's base stat total goes up by a solid 100, with the stats themselves either growing, no duh, or in some cases getting shuffled around a bit, offering completely new playstyles for them. Mega Garchomp, for example, rather infamously loses 10 points in speed, making it quite a bit slower, but it also scores itself a massive attack buff. Then there's also Mega Alakazam only getting a 90-point boost thanks to an oversight. Damn. Megas also get new abilities, even further expanding their use. Like Mega Charizard Y getting Drought, making it a pretty solid Sunsetter. But with this praise being given, Mega Evolution isn't all sunshine and rainbows. And that's not even counting the fact that they're dying during it. The distribution of which Pokemon actually got Megas certainly paints a picture. So in X and Y, there were 30 different Mega forms, though 2 of those were Latios and Latios, which went unused until Oras, so it's more like 28 forms. And on top of that, 2 Pokemon, rather infamously, have 2 Mega forms all to themselves, with both Charizard and Mewtwo getting X and Y Mega forms based on the version. Okay, as for the 26 actual unique Pokemon that got Mega forms here, 10 are from Kanto, 5 are from Johto, 8 are from Hoenn, though it should also be noted that Mega Blaziken was locked behind an event, but that's neither here nor there. And a mere 3 are from Sinnoh. And see, you might have noticed something there, Unova and even Kalos itself got nothing! And even more than that, the preferential treatment Kanto gets is abundantly obvious. Especially since, again, it technically has 2 extra Megas thanks to Charizard and Mewtwo. And actually, I think this might be an alright time to bring up a small theory surrounding all the Kanto pandering. Spoiler alert, they kind of did have a valid reason. Not a good reason, but an understandable one. So, Pokemon Black and White, right? These games are beloved nowadays. But back when they were new? No, not so much. Sure, plenty of people did still like them, like Ed Sheeran. Oh, alright, we forgive you. But there was also an absurd amount of criticism levied against them, with one of the most prominent points being the lack of any old Pokemon during the story. Lots of longtime fans didn't like the entirely new roster, and they were moderately vocal about it, yeah. So it's not exactly out of the question to think that all of these references to Kanto, especially in the form of the Megas, were kind of like an apology of sorts. It is ultimately just nostalgia baiting in the most literal possible way, but lots of people at the time actively wanted specifically that. Okay, tangent over, back to the Megas. The most tragic part about them is that after the Tower of Mastery, that's pretty much it. Yeah, in this game, once we do finally get our Mega Ring, the Mega Pokemon themselves stop having any focus put on them whatsoever. That whole story arc that takes up about a third of the game is over. And with it, we're done learning anything new about Megas, even though so much was left unexplained. And you know what? Maybe that wouldn't be so bad if the Mega Pokemon themselves actually showed up too. The total usage of this big headlining gimmick of the game is surprisingly minimal. You can only use a Mega Pokemon if you have their corresponding Mega Stone. But before the post-game, you can only find like 6 of them. So if your team doesn't have any of these Pokemon on it, you're out of luck. And as for fighting against Megas used by other trainers, there are 4 in the entire game. Karina in the 1v1 we just did, Lysander in his final battle, the Champion, and a rematch with Calum or Serena in the postgame. Come on, you couldn't have given something to Trevor? It's such missed potential, and it contributes a lot to the common sentiment that these Pokemon games are pretty bland in the grand scheme of things. Their big defining gimmick ends up being sidelined for over half of the game. It really is kind of funny in a bummer way how the Hoenn remakes stole so much of the spotlight surrounding these things. They gave Megas to way more trainers, let you access way more of them during the story, actually explained a possible source for Mega Evolution even though they're supposed to only exist in Kalos. You know, I never really understood the fuss around Pokemon Z because it was evidently right here this whole f***ing time. Route 12 is next for us, but right before we get to the gate, Calum stops us to give us the HM for Surf. And just like that, he's gone. Good. Well, we're lucky he did though, since Route 12 starts with a big river in the way we've got to cross. But none of our party members can learn Surf. I guess we've got to go out and catch another one real quick. Except no, actually, because there's a Pokemon breeder right here who just gives us a free Lapras. That is the definition of totally unnecessary, but hey, I won't complain. For us, it's another temporary party member, Mona. But that little road bump is barely scratching the surface of Route 12, because lo and behold, another gimmick. There's a Skiddo ranch here, and what can we do with Skiddo? We ride them! And on the complete opposite end of the spectrum as the Rhyhorn from earlier, these things are crazy fast! Able to leap over ledges, completely avoid trainer battles. It's honestly not much in terms of substance, but it's pure fun, and in that sense, it works flawlessly. But that's not all for Route 12. Okay, well it is. But by surfing north of it, we find ourselves in a completely optional area, Azure Bay. A big open, well, bay dotted with a couple islands that hide items alongside some trainers to fight. Another fun camera angle too, adding an artificial sense of scale that makes this place stand out more. At the back of the area, we can find this mysterious cave called Sea Spirit's Den too. Huh, surely that doesn't mean anything. And you know, there's a couple NPCs here too, just giving you some flavor text and... The Ampharos, dude, where have you been? The Sycamore Lab needs you! Now our next stop for progression is Coumarine City. Excuse me, I was talking. Coumarine City, a pretty nice place. But before we can really dive into it, we're given the Good Rod. And this thing's gonna get us our final proper party member, with this one having a bit more flair. So fishing in most Pokemon games is the same thing every time, with Gen 6 being no different. Cast the line, press the button when the exclamation mark appears, and bam! Fish! The Gen 6 games in particular, though, add one tiny element that overall spice it up so much. It's simple. Well, keep fishing up Pokemon in a row without ever missing a reel, and you get higher shiny odds. They can increase a lot too, maxing out at a whopping 1% chance to find them. Okay, that doesn't sound like a lot, but in the world of shiny Pokemon, it is. Now, admittedly, it's not quite as simple as just sitting down and doing it. You have to not only be paying attention to hit the reels on time, but alongside that, you need to have a Pokemon with either the suction cups or sticky hold ability in your party. And when pairing all that with a place where your bobber will be surrounded by rocks, you're practically guaranteed a bite every time so you don't break the chain. But once all that prep work is done, you can just go find a shiny in no time. Which is exactly what I did. It took maybe like 30 minutes since I kept messing up the timing, oops. And with that, we found our final party member, the shiny Clauncher Outback. Now that filler episode is done with, we're back in Coumarine City, a city that surprisingly has a gimmick too. The town is split into two halves, the first half being a seaport, complete with boats and market stalls to buy items at, and by taking Coumarine's signature monorail, we find ourselves at the top of a cliff overlooking said port. It can get a little obnoxious having to watch this cutscene every time you want to simply navigate through the town, but it's not a massive deal. Like, come on, my attention span isn't that fried, is that Clara? Speaking of said monorail, upon entering the station, we bump into Sycamore alongside Diantha this time. They start talking about us obtaining Mega Evolution, and Sycamore even brings up a hypothesis he has. That the key to Mega Evolution is a bond between trainer and Pokemon. That's not a hypothesis, that's an actual fact we were told like an hour ago. Ah yes, according to my calculations, Pokemon get caught in balls. The conversation isn't all redundant though. Diantha brings up Mega Evolution being a Kalos only thing, sure, and ties it back to the region's legendary Pokemon. The conversation kinda stops there, but hey, that is an inkling of new plot development. And one last thing before Diantha leaves, she talks more on bonds, and how it's understanding that makes those bonds truly powerful. It expands just that little extra bit on the game's overarching theme of beauty and differences, and that's pretty cool. A tad inorganic, considering she just says it because she wants to, but let's be real, Pokemon game themes have never been super subtle. Our next gym's in this town, but before we can take that on, Calum jump scares us. Now granted, he did warn us in that holocaster call when we first entered the city. Thanks? Every time your rival shows up in this game, it feels like a cutaway gag.
Oh, Peter, this is like that time you fought Calum.
Okay, now for Coumarine Gym, this one specializing in grass types. And it's kinda just Silage City Gym again, but slightly worse. It's another case of having to navigate to the top of a pillar, with the gimmick this time being via ropes you swing on or climb up. And while they are fun, they're not really interactive at all. Oh well, the important bit here is the gym leader. Oh, he sure is. This is Ramos, by the way. But did you know that? X and Y's gym leaders are pretty widely considered to be some of the most forgettable and... yeah, most of them do practically nothing outside of their gyms. And even in their gyms, their fights aren't all that memorable either. Maybe it's down to the designs. They're not bad, but lots of them certainly blend in. But they're not totally one note though. On TVs scattered all around the region, there's a chance you'll find a show talking about the gym leaders. Each leader has 2 different reports about them that can appear, giving them a tiny bit of extra depth. It is far from anything substantial, especially considering you only have a small chance of seeing any of it in the first place. But hey, now I know Viola's beret was a birthday gift from Valerie. That's adorable. And as for Ramos, he likes tea. Doesn't seem to like mystical fire though, not so sure about that part. With the plant badge obtained, we're just on a roll in terms of progress, cause next we're on to Route 13. Though while passing through the gate on the way there, we're stopped by Dexio and Cena again. This time's a little different though, as they give us a debriefing. There's a power outage to investigate at the power plant. Kinda strange how that just unceremoniously comes out of nowhere. I mean, I guess you could argue that it was teased way back during our first visit to Lumiose, but the way that it randomly becomes the central plot focus feels completely abrupt. Especially after how cohesive the whole Mega Evolution arc was, but maybe this is where the story finally starts picking up. Oh, but more important than that though, this is where they give us the Mountain Kalos Pokedex. Hooray! Route 13 is a barren wasteland. But that doesn't make it bad. Other things do instead. Okay, this route is another very gimmicky one, debatably even more so than Route 9 with the Rhyhorn. It's a huge flat plain in the middle of a bunch of power plants. And don't you worry, we will get to those. But it's like very empty, with just a couple items off to the side. The whole time you're here, there will be periodic winds blowing that make your roller skates near impossible to use, and they combine that with the grind rails, making for a kind of interesting area dynamic. But then it all falls apart with the wild Pokemon. They roam around in these dirt piles with insanely huge hitboxes, and with the wind, it's near impossible to avoid them, especially considering they home in on you. And worst of all, half of them have Arena Trap. Oh hell yeah, they made Diglett's Cave too! On one of the various metal bridges, we encounter a Team Flare grunt, and after a quick battle, he realizes he dropped his power plant pass. So good thing he tells us exactly where it is. Him specifically saying it's exactly 9 steps to the east is pretty funny though, I'll give them props for that. And with that pass, we can access the underground part of the power plant to stop Team Flare. And it's like super nothing. The area layout is quite literally a straight shot to the end, dotted with random grunts, with none of them being a challenge at all considering they have a mere 2 Pokemon each. So before long, we reach the center to find some more important Team Flare staff, most notably one of their scientists, Aliana. See, that's something pretty unique about Team Flare. Instead of having the standard bunch of admins, it's a bunch of scientists instead, kinda tying in more to X and Y's more future-y feel that it has a little bit. Now, none of them are really characters at all, except for one, but they do have unique designs, so, Aliana! Oh yeah, her team consists of a single Mightyena. So with that, we dispel Team Flare, and that's pretty much it, they just vanish. This whole sequence just really doesn't have the impact it should. Like, Team Flare's taken over a power plant, and they're even holding people hostage here. But once you beat the boss, they literally fade to black vanish. And the only inkling of a larger plot we get is that they are powering a device. I mean, it's a power plant, I'd hope so. Though there still is one more thing that happens here with Dexio and Cena, 2 mysterious individuals who call themselves the Defenders of Kalos appearing. And then they leave. Dexio and Cena do this whole Defenders of Kalos thing like 2 times in the entire story, and it's whenever they get involved with Team Flare stuff, but it's never elaborated upon why they do this. Like, it literally never comes up in conversation. Like, come on man, if you're gonna cosplay, at least choose something fun. But with that, we're done with the power plant. Completely. All those other locked doors, all those incredibly elaborate and unique buildings off in the distance, 100% completely inaccessible. Come on, you can't just show me the plant dome and not let me in. So that's why I think now's a good time to go over Pokemon X and Y's cut content. And sure, everyone knows at this point about the stuff in the files. Eternal Flower Floette being a completely unique functional Pokemon that goes entirely unused, or Zygarde having inaccessible signature moves that only became available in Sun and Moon. But there's also, specifically, the stuff found in the beta builds, and even beyond that, the development phases. Yeah, we're talking the Terra Leak. A very common sentiment surrounding Pokemon X and Y is missed potential. Lots of things in this game feel like they either A, come completely out of nowhere, or B, have an introduction but never get expanded upon. And spoiler alert, in the story, that only gets worse from here. It stayed that way for over a decade, X and Y being seen as that weird, unfinished game that never reached its full potential. Until, well, the announcement of ZA, but more importantly, the Terra Leak that showed us that these games are indeed unfinished, in the sense that they're not the complete vision. There was the standard stuff like some early Pokemon designs alongside completely cut Pokemon too. Shout out to this Peanut Dragon, I like this guy. We saw some early battles, which admittedly do look way more dynamic and interesting than the final. But like, it probably wasn't super feasible with so many different Pokemon and moves to account for, not to mention the atrocious time constraints, so that cut makes sense. But it also showed us lots of completely cut game. There were tons of features planned that just never made it in. From an apparent gym building mode to actual proper Rhyhorn races you can play, to soaring? Yeah, one of the coolest additions in the Hoenn remakes, apparently initially planned for X and Y. And in an instant, Sky Battles just made infinitely more sense, damn. There were also planned encounters for mythical Pokemon to be caught in the game. And that might actually explain some of the weirder areas, like the Rainbow Room and Reflection Cave. They even had a unique music track composed for their battles, which in the final game actually ended up being reworked into the Kanto legendary theme. And what was probably the biggest revelation, the Kalos region was sliced in half. Well, maybe not half exactly, but there was supposed to be an entire southern Kalos portion, complete with what looked to be, 8 more routes alongside 4 towns and 4 new dungeons? Ironically enough, among all these leaks, there was practically nothing relating to the power plant, aside from a couple pieces of concept art, including a whole ass space station snuck in there. Wait, what? But the general point here is that these games are technically not finished. Most things in the game that just feel like half of an idea probably are, in fact, only half of an idea. Hell, even in the final game's version of the Route 13 map, there is some pretty notable stuff found out of bounds. Namely a lava pit that's otherwise impossible to see, and also an extra non-functional root gate out in the middle of nowhere, implying that, at the very least, the power plant area would have been bigger. Oh, and also, Born This Way by Lady Gaga was found in the files too, and I just think that's worth noting. I'm beautiful in my way, cause God makes no mistakes. I'm on the right track, baby. On our way out of Route 13, we encounter a man. A very tall man. He mumbles a bit about some flower Pokemon that was given eternal life, and leaves. See what I mean about stuff just happening? It's not engaging, and it's the farthest thing from any sort of natural or organic storytelling. Like, AZ here is a good character and all. Oh wait, technically his name hasn't been revealed in the game yet, oops. But him just standing here and talking about the plot to nobody? It's the most bare-bones, basic, watered-down form of exposition you could ever think of. It's flat-out bad storytelling. But do you know what's not bad? Lumiose City. With us saving the power plant, the power outage from before is no longer an issue. Shauna says she wants to go with us to the lighting of Prism Tower, but come on. Right now, there's a whole city at our fingertips. Lumiose City is the Kalos region's claim to fame, almost serving the same role as Galar's wild area, funnily enough. The difference here, though, is that this place is packed with content. Like, to the point that this is where a solid fifth of the game is, and that's hardly an exaggeration. Though maybe that just speaks to how bare the rest of the region is, but... hell, it's so big that there are even taxis you can pay to take you place to place. So how about we go on a little tour, so to speak? First up, there's South Boulevard. This is the first part of the city where we initially came in, and as such, there's really not much to it. There's Sycamore Lab, the hair salon, but there's also the PR video studio. And keeping up with the Sword and Shield comparisons, it's kind of like a precursor to League cards in a way. You have up to 11 seconds of a video you can edit. Go! It's very limited in terms of how you can edit it, but in terms of options, there's quite a bit here. And hell, when the online servers were still up, you could share these too. You don't even really get anything out of doing PR videos either. They're just some good dumb fun, and I'm happy they're here. Like, check out this masterpiece I made.
So cute.
Oh.
Damn, this whole video should have just been that. South Boulevard also has Restaurant Le Na. And actually, elsewhere in the city, there's also Restaurant Le Ya, Le Wow, and Sushi High Roller that function identically. All being more or less some really unique semi-battle facilities. While there, you can order a meal, and by meal, they mean different types of battles, with your goal being to defeat your opponent in the correct number of turns. If you do it too fast, your meal will end up being undercooked, and if you take too long, it'll be overcooked. And upon a successful run, you'll get a whole bunch of valuable items to sell. Absolutely nothing crazy, but a fun time waster. Hell, all the opponents use different kinds of stalling strategies to purposefully screw you over. Though I don't know, no PP stalling Clodsire? Amateurs. And that's about it for South Boulevard, so how about North Boulevard, which is quite a bit meatier? First up is the Lumiose Museum. Well, less of a traditional museum exactly, and more of an art gallery. There are a ton of different pieces in here for you to admire in glorious... what, like 2p? It's all really nice artwork, with most of it being pre-existing stuff anyway, but like, you can't really make out any of it. Though this might be where the audio guide comes in, being offered to you when you enter the museum. And it just provides some extra lore for the paintings, going shockingly in-depth in some cases. Funnily enough, this is actually where we get some hint of lore towards the power plant. It's not much at all, but now we can't say it goes entirely unexplored, right? Next up is Hotel Rishizimu. This hotel is very different from all the other ones in the region, with none of the traveling NPCs or anything like that. Instead, you can work part-time jobs here. They're ultimately just a set of minigames to do, but if you do them well enough, you can end up earning quite a bit of money from them. And hey, when you're doing the room service job where you're taking people's food orders, the styles they ask for are named after different moves. And there's a chance the unused move Light of Ruin shows up here, and that's just neat. North Boulevard even brings back the Battle Institute from Black and White if you fancy that kind of thing. As for the entire middle of the city, it's admittedly not as exciting. Mostly just being a collection of different facilities and shops, like a place specializing in evolution stones or another in rare Pokeballs. Wait, what the hell? They're selling Master Balls? And I can't buy them? Plus a couple more niche ones, like a smoothie store to raise your Pokemon's friendship, a salon to change your Furfru's trim. This is also where you find the Lotto ID Center, just in case you have an itch to do a tiny bit of gambling as a treat. Plus there's even this suspicious empty building. Huh, surely this won't come back later. But there's actually one more big thing to Lumiose City, a whole mechanic encompassing the entire place. Remember all the way back to our first visit of the city when we got kicked out of that fancy clothing store? Yeah, no, I'm still not over it. Well, that was because our style stat wasn't high enough. I mean, that shouldn't justify it, but you, the player, have a style value that goes up whenever you do pretty much anything in the city, from doing the side activities to simply buying things. And with more style points, you not only unlock discounts in tons of places, like when buying the Megastones from the Stone Emporium, for example, but also completely new options in tons of places. You obviously need a high enough style to access the aforementioned clothing store, as well as the Sushi High Roller restaurant. There's more editing options to use in trainer PR videos, the available catalog of fur fruit trims expands, and at the juice shop, you can even unlock drinks that act like super rare candies, giving any one of your Pokemon up to 5 level increases. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, there's some cute unique flavor text from NPCs that changes depending on how stylish you are. Now this is motivational right here. I found my new phone wallpaper. And oh, that's not even to mention the smaller details, like the alleys you can run down filled with shady trainers. Or even the iconic... Joke's on you, I pissed myself when I found that shiny earlier. I'm all out now. Overall, it's abundantly clear why Lumiose City was treated like the big deal it was. There's enough stuff here to constitute as like, I don't know, an entire DLC for a modern Pokemon game, barring the lack of wild encounters, of course. That sentiment being especially helped by the... But for now, Lumiose City just isn't itself without its centerpiece, Prism Tower. And we don't want to leave Shauna hanging on that invite, right? While we're about to witness the historic lighting of Prism Tower, we're introduced to some of Shauna's friends. Clement, the city's gym leader, alongside Bonnie, his little sister. And fun fact, she's one of the few Pokemon characters to have a kill count. With the future being now, thanks to science, Clement brings the light back to the tower, complete with a surprisingly cinematic cutscene. That's another memory made with Shauna and another gym for us to battle. Yeah, Prism Tower itself is Lumiose City's gym, and a pretty good one at that. It's another take on the classic quiz style that's been done a couple times before, but this time Bonnie isn't just asking some standard trivia questions. No, this time we're doing Who's That Pokemon? You're given a Mon silhouette alongside a list of multiple choice answers, and you're tasked with battling whatever trainer you think corresponds to the right answer. And the questions surprisingly can be, well, not hard, though maybe that's just because I have no friends, but some do try to trip you up. Things start easy with the first silhouette being a goddamn Pikachu, but then the third question asks you to decipher which of the elemental monkeys this is. Something that absolutely could trip up a more casual player. But it's still nothing all that tough, so on to the battle with Clement himself. Oh god, he's whipping out the doohickey and everything! As per usual, his team is very easy, not even justifying having to use Mega Evolution at all. So we score ourselves the badge, and upon stepping outside, get a call from Sycamore inviting us to Lysander Cafe. Before that though, we should probably get our Pokemon healed in the nearby Pokemon Center. I've heard Monsieur Lysander runs a cafe above his lab. His what? Well, while we're at Lysander's, cafe, he makes a comment about wanting to use Mega Evolution for himself one day, which prompts Sycamore to reveal that, oh yeah, Lysander's a descendant of the king's brother. You know, just casually like that. And as per usual with this guy, it's right back into the evil stuff, rambling about foolish humans who take too much for themselves and yelling about them being filth. But at least this kinda goes somewhere, giving us some new lore, not only with a mention of the legendary Pokemon and what they do, but also with Lysander revealing that the Kalos King, 3,000 years ago, did the very thing Lysander was just yelling about. In a selfish act, he made a terrible weapon. That's not all though. Lysander keeps rambling on about overpopulation, what the fuck? And then he argues that the king's fucking war crime had the bright side of cleansing the world. Sycamore, your boyfriend is a psychopath! Oh, but wait, he gives us a King's Rock, so it's all okay. And then it's a quick holocaster call from Trevor saying we're all meeting on Route 14, so that's where we're going next. Yeah, right now we're kind of completely aimless plot-wise. As mentioned a bit before, the whole Mega Evolution arc really was our drive to progress in the game for quite a bit there. But now that's over, and hell, since we're back in Lumiose City, we don't even really have a straight path to follow anymore. Team Flare has hardly been established yet, so it's hard to say whether or not we're really pursuing them right now in the story. I guess there are the gyms, but those are barely given any focus in this game. The only thing really helping us with those is that we got a tease of Victory Road earlier. And this call with Trevor just exemplifies that feeling of aimlessness. Without that call suddenly telling us we're going there now for arbitrary reasons, we would have, well, no reason to go there next. Like, we're not even told about the town that comes after it. We're simply going here right now in a vacuum. I guess it isn't a huge deal since X and Y's story is pretty lame to begin with, so you're really just here for the gameplay. But it really contributes to that feeling that things are just happening for the sake of happening. Almost feeling like, at some points, the game is going on autopilot. But I want an actual pilot! Where's Skyla when you need her? That's awful, I'm sorry. Anyway, Route 14. We meet up at an old shady playground, which is pretty cool given that this is Kalos' designated spooky zone. And it's just us and Trevor chatting about the Pokédex for a bit, all before Caleb rudely butts in, immediately demanding a battle. On an unrelated note, Urbane wins. After that, Shauna and Tierno join up with us too, with Shauna suggesting we all visit the rumored scary house found on this route. I actually really like this moment. It sells the whole ragtag group of kids on an adventure vibe the best in the entire game. Like, yeah, a friend group of teenagers probably would want to go investigate some paranormal stuff just for the fun of it. I imagine if the game had more moments like this of these people just being friends and adventuring together, the general fan base would be way more open to this friend group as a whole. Imagine a Pokemon game where you have a bunch of rival and friend characters, but everyone interacts and does things and hangs out like it's Persona 4 or something. That would be something special. Heartwarming, Persona fan plays their second video game. There's a little more banter between everyone, but before we properly set off, Shauna stops and begins talking to us, commenting on how everyone else is working so hard towards their goals, meanwhile she's just goofing off and making memories. She's going through this journey completely aimlessly, before very quickly masking it with a just kidding and leaving. That sense of aimlessness is evidently something she's very insecure about. And on top of that, it's a really grounded and real insecurity. Yeah, Shauna's probably the best character in this game. And one last thing worth noting about this character-defining moment, it never comes up again, except for maybe one single line in the climax if you're willing to stretch a bit. It's been said time and time again, but missed potential. This game is filled to the brim with potential. As for Route 14 itself, it's yet another one with something new going on. There's the aforementioned playground, which makes for a nice set piece, with the core of the route being more like a swampland, complete with deep water we have to wade through, occasionally getting stuck in it. It's really nice visually too, with a lot going on. Fallen branches and dead trees covering a lot of the path, selling that whole creepy vibe quite a bit more. And speaking of creepy, we finally find ourselves at the scary house. After just a bit of back and forth and contemplation, the whole group heads inside. Minus Calum because he ran off earlier. Wouldn't want him to have too many fun interactions. Inside, a man starts telling us the story of how he found the scary house. Creeping his way inside after being lost on a stormy night, merely seeking shelter. He soon sees presumably the owner huddled in the corner, who shouts at something that's behind our storyteller, with that something being a horde of faceless men! I remember back when these games were newer, a surprising amount of people were trying to theorize about the kind of lore significance the whole Faceless Men thing has. You know, as if it's not just some ghost story in-universe. Oh yeah, the two most mysterious parts of X and Y at the time. Zygarde and Slenderman. Though, for whatever it's worth, this is definitely one of the more memorable bits from Kalos' story. And the cherry on top is that immediately after that spine-chilling experience, the man asks for a tip. I don't know, that's just funny. After that experience, we're practically done with Route 14, but screw it, I don't know where else I'll mention these. Natural objects! Sometimes, during battles in this game and this game only, there'll be a thing behind the opposing Pokemon. Depending on the area, it could be a tree, a rock, some tall grass, and if you just so happen to use very specific attacks in a battle with these things present, they'll break, giving you an extra item after the battle. They're not even really anything great, typically just berries or very situational held items. And just like that, they immediately vanish starting in the next games. Oh, I see, so these are what Let's Go was missing. At the end of Route 14, we find ourselves in Lavere City, one of the more inspired ones in the region. Not only for the more autumnal look, but also, for lack of a better term, the whimsy. And not just because of the free Gengarite, because, sure. There are giant mushrooms around the place, a common fairy tale staple, and a really neat detail is the clock on this giant tree here. By looking really closely, we can notice that there's 13 hours on it, being in reference to the witching hour in folklore, the time where black magic is said to be at its strongest. And rather fittingly, this place's gym is the fairy type one. Also fitting considering, well, this is when the type was introduced, obviously. What better way to get the player base familiar with it? Now that Gym Leader's lead not having a fairy type move kind of sours that notion, but you know. In terms of the gym itself, aesthetically, it's fantastic. A giant dollhouse with 9 very unique and well-detailed rooms. Mechanically though, it's just a warp maze. And being a 9-room layout with warp pads in each corner, it's practically a carbon copy of Sabrina's gym from Kanto. Okay, well I'll give them this. They did wait a little while before starting their pandering again. Though at the very least, the gym leader Valerie is super distinct from Sabrina. A lot of it is down to her design. It's unique, it's cute, though once again we beat her quickly, earning ourselves the fairy badge. But you see, I may have been a little misleading before. Lapras City does have one more point of interest that we haven't seen quite yet. Oh, how suspenseful. As Shauna and Trevor say when we meet them outside, we're going on a tour of the Pokeball Factory. A neat idea for a location that I'm surprised took them this long to put into a game. Upon following suit, we see Shauna and Trevor being chased away by Team Flare grunts. Oh, okay, so this is where the plot is now, I see. And with Tierno falling back to help them, it's down to us and Calum to find out what the hell is going on in here. And then Calum gets stopped by a grunt immediately, so we're on our own now. Great, glad he's here. The Pokeball Factory is more or less your standard dungeon, though it does have one big gimmick making it stand out a bit more than most in the form of these conveyor belts. They carry you down a set path, with you sometimes having to choose which point to get on them at, and about halfway through you even reverse their directions, allowing you to access new places on them. And as cool as all that is, this dungeon does have one big flaw, that being that it's really tiny. Just the one room, so this cool concept doesn't get the chance to reach any sort of potential. And something that absolutely doesn't help is the trainers here, because there's one big issue shared across all of them, hell, across all the trainers in the entire game, that just gets more and more noticeable as we progress. Also being another thing that makes these games far too easy. That being that most enemy trainers have like no Pokemon on their teams. We just got our 6th badge, and yet these grunts still only have 1 or 2 party members. And it's been the same case for every other trainer so far too. In fact, we haven't battled any trainers that use any more than 3 Pokemon yet. Neither gym leaders nor rivals. And it stays that way until right before the 7th gym, with your rival showing up as the first trainer with a whopping 4 party members. Actually, we can take this further too. In the entire game, across every single trainer, optional or not counting the triple battles in the Battle Maison, there are only 3 trainers across the entirety of Kalos that have 5 or 6 Pokemon on their team. Those being your rival, the champion, and the fisherman with 6 Magikarp that's in practically every Pokemon game. Oh, he's so powerful. Sure, getting interrupted by a random trainer and being forced into a 5-minute battle is far from the most fun thing you could do, but having so few Pokemon makes it so most trainer battles feel completely unsubstantial, to the point that lots of them are practically no different from a wild encounter. And the sentiment really does extend throughout most of the game. Like on Victory Road, most of the trainers are stuck with one kinda strong team member to use. It's weird because, as I mentioned earlier, Kalos does have the biggest regional dex in the entire series, but the NPC trainers just hardly utilize it. Okay, jumping way ahead for a second to the Elite Four, they illustrate this perfectly. So not only do they only have 4 Pokemon each, though to be fair it is called the Elite Four, but their teams also strangely have lots of overlap with other important trainers, which isn't something that happens all that often in these games. Seabolt has a Gyarados, even though that's Lysander's ace. Malva has a Pyroar, again used by Lysander, but also a Talonflame, which Tierno had not long earlier. Hell, on Victory Road, you fight your rival, Calum or Serena, who has an Altaria by that point. And then immediately after in the Elite Four, Drasna has one too! Salamence is literally available during the story, what are we doing? Oh, never mind, that one doesn't get Cotton Guard, I see. Was it another development thing? Like they didn't have the time to really review that stuff? Because as it is, I'm sorry, I'm tired of looking at Pyroar! And naturally, that lack of mons even carries over to the Team Flare higher-ups right here. They're invading the factory just to get more Pokeballs to catch more Pokemon. Yawn! Admittedly, it is pretty cool how you don't really know what they're doing until their plans finally come together way later. But until then, everything before that point feels so generic and played out. Not helped by it being another thing Team Rocket did already. We're introduced to 2 more of the scientists here, Celosia and Bryony, who are very quickly dealt with after a single multi-battle with Calum. Even though we beat them, however, they claim that they already have enough Pokeballs for whatever it is they're doing and take their leave. I guess that means we kind of lost this time, huh? But hey, it seems to be enough for the president, who offers us either a Master Ball or a big nugget as thanks. Aw, damn, with that big nugget, we'd be set for life! But he just ends up giving us both anyway. I think this guy's the first ever good rich person. We reconvene with our friends real quick just to reestablish that Team Flare are indeed the bad guys, before being interrupted by a pretty weird call on our holocaster. A mysterious caster appears, announcing the news of the Pokeball Factory's attack publicly. And that's it. I genuinely don't know why this scene is here. Route 15, one of the best in the game, to be honest. Visually, it's a treat, with the autumn theming we saw in Lapras City being used to its fullest, even factoring itself into the gameplay with these piles of leaves you can walk over to reveal either items or sometimes trainers. It's almost reminiscent of how some routes would be like during autumn in the Unova games. But the real highlight here is surprisingly the music. Route 15's theme is so magical, for lack of a better term. It starts out all quiet and almost curious sounding, before quickly flaring into something way more grand. Perfectly encapsulates that feeling of being in the thick of your journey now. I'd go as far as to say it's one of the best area themes in the whole series. Yeah, eat your heart out, Dragon's Den. Though there's even more to Route 15 than just that. See Route 16. They're directly connected to each other, forming more or less one big route. Same aesthetics, same leaf gimmick, with 16 just connecting back to Lumiose City at the end. But there's still one more area that's sort of hidden between these two routes. That being the Lost Hotel, a completely optional underground labyrinth filled with some trainers, items, and garbage bins? These are a strange addition to X and Y, only appearing in 2 areas, this being one of them. They'll usually be completely empty, but sometimes you'll find them shaking, meaning there's a Pokemon inside. But the Pokemon you can find depend on the day of the week, with the Lost Hotel specifically having nothing but Trubbish and Garbodor, except on Tuesdays where Rotom can appear. Wait, hold on, what kind of monster put Rotom in the trash? This place does have one more claim to fame though, that being the famous roller skater Twirling Whirlwind, the definition of a Glupshido Pokemon character. You can only get to him if you've unlocked all the other roller skating tricks in the game, and once you have, he teaches you the ultimate trick. Oh yeah, Lysander won't know what hit him! After all that excitement, we find ourselves in Dendemil Town, swapping out the autumn theme for a snowy, wintry one. Naturally, we're immediately bumped into by Sycamore alongside Dexio. He rambles about traveling the world when he was younger and eating new foods. Look, it's completely irrelevant, but it's a nice bit of characterization, so Sycamore, you get a pass. But then the conversation quickly steers itself into being about the legendary Pokemon Xerneas, with it apparently being able to give life energy to plants and even Pokemon, and right now it's probably asleep somewhere. That doesn't really give us any direction, but it is more plot-relevant info, so that's something. So as for our direction, good thing Trevor's here to guide us. Again, this time mentioning Frost Cavern, which is a place that exists. He doesn't elaborate at all. Yeah, still no story reason to go there, but we sure can. Oh god, it's her! Now the next spot in progression should be Route 17, Mamoswine Road, though the titular Mamoswine just isn't there, so I guess Frost Cavern it is. I completely forgot to talk about Dendemil Town itself. It's pretty cool. I like the big windmill, and the grind rail is pretty cool. It's cool. There's nothing really pushing us to go here. We're just told that it exists and normal progression is blocked off, so I guess through process of elimination, this is the right choice. You know what could have made it feel so much more natural? All Trevor really needed would have been one extra line saying, I think there's something weird going on at Frost Cavern. That would have given us proper incentive to go look at it. And, spoilers, there is something weird going on there. With us finding the Mamoswine that's supposed to be on Route 17 out here, who seems to be concerned about something in the cavern. See, that's our motive right there. Why did it have to wait until a second before we entered? At that point, we're just stumbling into the plot whenever it happens, and that's not engaging. So they're damn lucky Frost Cavern's a cool place. Right before you enter, they do another cool trick with the camera here, with it panning behind you as you walk towards the entrance, giving such a grand sense of scale. As for the interior, it's a pretty standard ice cave with your pretty standard ice puzzles that most Pokemon games have. But if you remember, X and Y introduced diagonal movement. So the sliding ice puzzles this time can kinda be completely brute force by moving however. That's not inherently a negative, but it's still something worth noting about this place, considering it makes the puzzles themselves not really puzzles. So with that said, it's not long before we find ourselves encountering Team Flare once again, who themselves are face to face with an Abomasnow, with them trying to catch it since it apparently has lots of energy? Yeah, it's alive, I'd sure hope so. With their logic being whoever has the most Pokemon and the most energy will come out on top. Plus, if that wasn't enough, their threats about only caring for Team Flare have seemingly escalated. The only ones left alive? Still looking for that mature, violent Pokemon game? Oh, it's right here. Aside from that colorful dialogue though, it goes the same way as every other Team Flare encounter has. We fight the grunts, then battle the scientists, being Mabel this time, and save the day. I really want to see the metric of the people who learn about her through ZA. As thanks for all that, the Abomasnow even just gives us its Megastone. What a gentleman. And that's pretty much that. With us saving Mamoswine's friend, it's back on Route 17, ready to give us a ride through the snow. It's pretty much the same thing as Route 9 with the Rhyhorn. Same occasional rock smashing, same pretty janky controls. It's not a particularly long or complex route by any means, but they do pull the camera back here, making it at least seem a bit more impactful and grand. And a sudden holo clip from Calum's a good enough indicator to let us know that we've already made it to the next city. He literally only says, I challenge you to a battle in front of Anastar's gym. Man, at least throw a smell you later in there or something. Speaking of Anastar, it's another waterfront town, but this one stands out by seemingly being built on a pier. Plus there's, the giant magic sundial? Now this is a set piece. It's unique, it's pretty, and it actually has some regional lore significance later on, which is unheard of for Kalos. Actually, wasn't the last time we got regional lore that was unrelated to the plot all the way back at Parfum Palace? Damn. And speaking of expanding the lore, Sina appears to let us know that someone in this town knows something about the legendary, Xerneas in our case. And this information is surprisingly entirely optional. In a random unmarked house, a generic Monsieur NPC just spills it all, saying how around 800 years ago, Xerneas sent life energy surging through all the land, to everybody, which is apparently something it does when it's about to die. He even adds on to this, saying that at the end of a terrible war 3,000 years ago, a Pokemon entered to rescue every other Pokemon that was wounded, with that possibly also being Xerneas' doing. And once all is said and done, Xerneas, according to old folktales, becomes a tree. But that's actually not all for the legendary lore, because this part of the game is where version differences actually kind of start to matter, even if just a tiny bit. Yveltal is the polar opposite of Xerneas, where instead of surging life across the land, it created darkness, killing literally everybody. Oh, lovely. Same goes for its place after the war. Though this version adds in some extra dialogue about how Yveltal might just be a metaphor for the horrors of war. And that's a really neat line, just adding to that feeling of Yveltal being, well, a legend. A Pokemon as part of folklore passed down over time that might not even be real. Even if in a minor way, it helps these legendaries that otherwise don't have that much of a story presence that tiny bit more. Though it's quite a lot to just be dumped on you so nonchalantly like this. Especially since, spoilers, this is the only lore for Xerneas and Yveltal we get in the entire game. At most, some characters may bring up how their powers work again. I've mentioned countless times just how many things in this game feel either rushed or half-finished, and this is one of those things that screams that! There's no way that literally every detail we were given about these guys was supposed to be locked behind some random NPC in a random house. Especially considering how this game is otherwise obsessed with stopping us to tell us the plot. And if this always was the intention, well then that's just a weird-ass design choice, isn't it? Also, related, there's a rising star trainer in the same house who mentions how a couple years back, Team Flare were here asking the same questions about the legendary. That's like actually important plot info, and yet it's completely optional? That's not necessarily a bad thing on its own, but why did they only start doing it now? 6 badges in! But that's not the only interesting house in Anastar. We can pay a visit to this old man here, and in some complete tonal whiplash, his wife just died. Therefore, we're given the option to give him any Pokemon to keep him company, so long as they're level 5 or under. And we're a good Samaritan, so we go and catch him a Pidgey real quick, brightening his day. It's a cute little side quest, we'll be sure to check back in on them later. Alright, now for the gym! Out of the way, Caleb. Now for the gym! And after a couple mediocre showings, this one's back to being flat out great. It seems pretty innocuous when we first enter, just being a room, before the walls fall away, revealing outer space! It's really pretty too, with swirling galaxies and constellations filling the sky. We've already had 2 gyms where the goal was to navigate around a pillar, and this gym is a somewhat similar idea, but instead of a big cylinder, we're on a big sphere. Now, aside from the unique presentation, it's more or less just a maze, plus the added element of different layers you can warp between. But overall, especially thanks to the presentation, it's an alright gym. Solid 7.8 out of 10. Too much space. Naturally, at the end, we meet the leader, Olympia. And I think she holds the record for having the least pre-battle dialogue of any gym leader ever, with a grand total of 11 words. Though admittedly, her battle finally shows us at least a bit of a challenge. Her team, despite still being small, has a handful of status moves, not being afraid to set up Calm Mind on us. Though with enough patience, we take the win, securing ourselves the Psychic Badge. Though before we head on our way, Olympia says something kind of odd. Power that grants life awakens, voices of woe. And even stranger in why, she says it's a power that takes life. Could it be foreshadowing? Because this game's climax has no other build-up whatsoever? Well, after that trippy-ass experience, we naturally step back out to get some fresh air, only to be interrupted by Calum. Again. He talks to us for a bit before we suddenly get a surprise call on our holocaster. This time from Lysander, and he's here to make some sort of announcement? He is going to bring back the ultimate weapon and kill everybody for the sake of returning the world to a beautiful and natural state. Okay, so this is a loaded moment. This is possibly the least natural way to do a villain reveal, ever. Sure, we know he's been saying some pretty shady stuff, but everyone around him has just brushed it off. No character has ever even said, Lysander, that's a bit weird, so there's practically no build-up. Let's have him just call you and reveal he's the antagonist now. Like, Chairman Goddamn Rose's reveal had more build-up, and his reveal was this. Well, the next logical step, according to Calum, is to find Lysander's base, apparently. With Lumiose City being a good place to start, considering that's where we first met him. Sound enough logic, I guess? And just to hit the nail on the head, these grunts nearby just so happen to be mentioning Lysander Cafe. So away we go! The atmosphere is somehow even more imposing than the first time we were here, with more menacing music, and it's almost completely empty, barring a few waiters. Hey man, could you tell me what that whole killing everybody thing was about? Oh Turns out they're also part of Team Flare. And after beating the other waiter too, we find ourselves in Lysander Labs. That place foreshadowed by the backpacker in the Pokemon Center. That's neat. Oh, and that's Lysander. Right here. He's still trying to justify this to us while saying that only the chosen ones will survive to see tomorrow. And in order to test that, he battles us right now. It's not quite anticlimactic because we're still in the climax, but really? Our first showdown with the big bad is not only immediately after the reveal, but also in the entrance of a random dingy room. Not helped by him being pitifully easy, which is not only thanks to, well, the game, but beyond that, he has 2 unevolved Pokemon on his team? Yeah, he ended off with a goddamn Murkrow. So we win, and he starts talking about how he tried actually saving the world by using all the money he's made, but then stopped because the world was too vast and stupid. It seems like they're really trying hard to make Lysander an almost sympathetic villain, which isn't too out of the question, since in the games after this, we've seen a ton of bad guys that we later find out aren't so bad deep down. But that just doesn't work with Team Flare, not only because, 1, the story really doesn't give Team Flare the time they need to be a truly great sympathetic villain, especially considering that the reason they do the things they do is pretty shallow and it's sometimes flat out vague, but also 2, he's actively and directly working to kill everybody. I don't care why he's doing it, he's still doing it! I'll bring up Rose again because he also sucks, but like, at least his goal to bring about the darkest day was just that. He was incredibly misguided and close-minded, and yeah, you would have to be a sicko to let him kill Hop, but at least mass murder wasn't his main goal! And what if I told you this sympathetic villain crap gets worse around the end of the game? Would you believe me? Would you believe me? He even invites us to try and stop him, to show him how strong our desire to win is. And that's kinda cool. It kinda shows a level of confidence in what he's doing, maybe? But that also never goes anywhere. You know what is going somewhere, though? His hairline. Dude, you don't have long left, it's coming. After all of that, though, we're ready to tackle Lysander Labs, off to find whichever scientist has the elevator key. And this place is actually pretty ass. It's the most generic Pokemon evil team base you could ever think of. It does have the warp tiles and spinny tiles, which at least make navigation kind of interesting. But aside from those, it's a big empty room with a bunch of tiny blockades that form walls. It looks unnatural, it's not creative, and it's not interesting as the big villain dungeon. In fact, it's so generic that in the post-game, when we find Lysander Lab's secret floor, it's literally just the same layout again. I can't even be mad at that, that's funny. Plus, apparently this is the place where he makes the holocasters too? How? Where? The only saving grace here is that on the edges of the room, there are some side rooms. Now, most are completely uninteresting or only exist to hold one of the scientists we're supposed to fight. But upon entering one of them, we find Dexio and Cena doing the whole Defenders of Kalos bit again, with them apparently looking for a really tall man, as he may have some ties to Team Flare. And that's all for their involvement. Give them a round of applause! As we fight our way through the scientists, they start revealing more and more elements of Team Flare's grand plan. Celosia and Bryony in particular revealing that everything they did, stealing the electricity, looking for a Pokemon's energy, was done to power the ultimate weapon. The way it all comes together here is admittedly pretty cool. Zero clue what the whole fossil part was about though. And hey, remember Route 10's stones? Those also play a role in Team Flare's plan, hence why there were grunts there all that time ago, since they have the apparent capability to suck away a Pokemon's life force. Those stones, this entire time, have been graves. Graves for all the Pokemon lost in that horrible war that Team Flare is, in a way, trying to bring back the horrors of. It's a shockingly dark yet satisfying full circle moment. Granted, the story still hasn't been very present up until this point, but this climax, narratively at least, it's pretty solid. Moving on to Scientist Mabel, she not only reveals that the holocasters are used to spy on everyone in Kalos, which doesn't really mean anything, it's kind of a completely irrelevant plot point, and she also brings up Mega Evolution, saying something to the effect that the ultimate weapon can max out a Pokemon's power? And she uses this as a moment to go, oh, we're not so different, you and I think I should start taking back my compliments of this climax. But she also implies that the scientists have been doing their own research on the legendary Pokemon, as foreshadowed by that one girl in Anistar. possibly they fueled the ultimate weapon with that kind of power. Yeah, no, getting hit with geomancy in the form of a beam? It's over. Well, with the elevator key obtained, we head on down, running face first into Lysander, alongside the tall man from all the way back on Route 13. And completely unprompted, he starts talking to us, telling a story about a man who had a beloved Pokemon before the two were thrust into that 3,000-year-old war we've been hearing about. And during the long, tumultuous battle, the man's Pokemon died. The way it's written, though, is way more emotional. The man telling the story just says he was given a tiny box. And that softer, almost innocent wording of it really sells the heartbreak of that moment. The man, though, wanted his Pokemon back, so he built a machine to do just that. And while the machine worked and he was reunited with his partner, that wasn't enough. He was still furious at the cruel world that did this to his Pokemon in the first place. So he transformed this machine made for giving life into a machine of death and destruction. Just like that, the war was over. But his Pokemon... It's the image with the ant with the bag. His Pokemon felt horrible about how, while it was brought back, tens of thousands of others had to die in its place. All because of their friend's rage. And thus, it left. All of this is accompanied by beautiful artwork too, genuinely stunning stuff here. This is essentially here not only to explain exactly what the ultimate weapon is capable of, but also to expand on that war we've been hearing about alongside the King of Kalos. It's a genuinely great moment. But it also kind of feels like it just comes out of nowhere in a way. Not only does the tall man kind of just start telling it with absolutely no build-up or lead-in, but we've also learned so little else about this lore during the story that it really feels like a plot dump. Man, this whole climax is actually really solid, but it manages to be dragged down by the rest of this game's storytelling. Well, it's not long after that we quickly realize the reason this man knows that story so well is because he lived it. And according to Lysander, he is AZ. Oh yeah, people want to bang him now. Lysander even says he has the same name as a king from 3,000 years ago, just to make sure we knew. AZ is the same king of Kalos as in the lore, thus meaning he's also related to Lysander. Didn't expect this game to go the family drama route, huh? And guess what? They don't do anything with this either. Now that Lysander has his hands on the key to the weapon though, there's not much more we can do other than listen to AZ's pleas to try and get it back. We head down even lower to find Lysander talking with a new scientist, and definitely the most important one, Xerneas. Prime League player physique right here. They reveal that everything's already in order for them to set their plans into motion, and yet Lysander is still trying to keep up the noble persona to him, saying that we, as a chosen one, should be able to stop him. So naturally we do battle with Xerneas. I guess just because he wanted to? He acts super excited after we beat him too. Guess he deserves some leisure after all this hard work being a terrorist. And also just because he wants to, he gives us a choice between a red button and a blue button. One of which starts the ultimate weapon and the other doesn't. So the fate of Kalos is in our hands. Wait, if we just don't choose though, the region is safe, right? We win! In reality, the button you choose does not matter. If you happen to pick red, you activate the weapon. Whereas picking the blue button doesn't, but Xerneas just activates it remotely anyway. Well, if I had known that, I wouldn't have spent the last 30 minutes deciding. There's really nothing we can do at this point other than look at the nearby monitor showing Geosenge Town. Only to watch on in horror as the ultimate weapon shoots out of the ground, causing destruction all around it, with it pointing to the sky, ready to fire again. It's a really good cutscene. Not only is the weapon cool looking, but being able to see it partially destroy a town really sells the intensity here. And actually, fun fact, the ultimate weapon looks slightly different between versions. I can't really add on to that, that's just kind of a neat detail even though it doesn't matter at all. Though the weapon isn't quite charged enough to fire just yet, so we should probably at least try going to Geosenge to see if there's something we can do about it. It's essentially a race against time. Where was this energy the entire rest of the game? We see that Team Flare has completely seized the place. And this one particular grunt blocking Route 10 has some pretty interesting dialogue, telling himself he can't hear the Pokemon's cries. Likely referring to the ones on Route 10 being drained by the stones. It's a singular tiny line, but it adds a shocking amount of depth to the grunts who are otherwise pretty generic. Makes you wonder if they really think this is all worth it. Right before we enter their true hideout, Calum even tags along, saying he got the rundown from Dexio and Cena while he was also in the lab? No, you didn't. I would know because I was there and you weren't. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if they added Calum or Serena as your rival in order to get around you being a silent protagonist. During this climax, they end up having a conversation with Lysander, which if they weren't there, nobody else could do. How's that for a game theory? Well, we're here. Scientists and grunts all gathered for the big event, with Lysander standing before us as well. And this is where he reveals he's drawing energy from the legendary Pokemon. Then he starts going on about the too many people crap again, saying that less people would mean less fighting over the limited resources. Dude, you're stupid! Oh shit, it's the thing! Not so funny when he reveals that part of his plan is to kill all Pokemon, since they can also be used as tools of conflict. He says before immediately using them as tools of conflict. This battle's funny, alright, because it's almost identical to his last one. All of his Pokemon have gone up by 2 levels, the Meanfu and Murkrow finally evolved, and then now Honchkrow having Night Slash in its moveset instead of Foul Play. Well, we won, obviously, but all that did was waste time. He tells us we should go downstairs to see just how hopeless things are. So we do just that in pursuit of the legendary. Now we're in Team Flare's real base. The lab before was just an appetizer. This is where it's really going down. Team Flare's secret base is just a hallway littered with trainers. You know what? That actually makes more sense than the lab. Partway through, Shauna even joins us. They must have known she was the best character. She does worry a little bit about being a burden to us, but concludes that friends stick together. And she's even the one to break through the locked door at the end, with some of Clement's help. I'll be real, the story is otherwise so scatterbrained that the mere mention of Clement alongside remembering the fact that he's friends with Shauna genuinely caught me off guard. Well, we're finally here. The legendary Pokemon is right in front of us, looking a little more tree-like than on the box, but that's fine. The air is tense. Then a bunch of Team Flare admins spontaneously appear. No joke, it fades out, fades in, there they are. Shauna and Calum do split off to occupy a couple of them, but it's on us to take down the last 4. Sure, that's not awkward or pace-breaking in the slightest. But after that interruption, the legendary Pokemon, Xerneas, finally awakens. It's a super cinematic and really well animated scene. And hey, when Xerneas forms that crystal orb around it, it looks practically identical to what other Pokemon do when they Mega Evolve. And this is also pretty much our only direct link between them and Mega Evolution. Or at least in terms of what we actually see, but I guess we'll take what we can get. And with that, we're sent straight into battle. The battle background here kinda comes completely out of nowhere, but it's super pretty, so it gets a pass. And the music here is pretty great too, going for another techno-sounding theme. It might not sound fitting, but in practice, it works really well. Though Numa may have done a little too much damage here. So, second time's the charm, and since it's a mandatory capture for the story to progress, it's not hard to do, with a very generous 45 catch rate. We're even given the option to add it to our party right from here, a feature that only started being standard in Sun and Moon. So for now, at least for a second, R joins the party.
And get a load of this page, R.
So that's it, right? With the power source gone, Team Flare can't use the ultimate weapon. But of course, it's never really that easy, because Lysander walks in and... what the hell is he wearing? Bulbapedia says it's to drain Xerneas' power himself, but like, that's not mentioned in the game. He just has these. Oh, he's surrounded by flies because, he's stinky, I get it. He laments being let down by Xerneas, about how it chose to be our Pokemon. Now, he's fully willing to take Xerneas from us by force. And with him apparently having Mega Evolution in his arsenal too, the final battle is upon us. And yeah, that wasn't an empty threat. His Gyarados can Mega Evolve, which is pretty scary. But aside from that one element, it is the exact same battle as like 10 minutes ago. Exact same mons, exact same movesets this time, just with a level increase. And on top of that, Xerneas has the type advantage over 3/4 of his team. I guess Y could technically be considered the harder game then, considering Yveltal doesn't have nearly as much of an advantage. But all that musing aside, one single Moonblast to his Gyarados, and it's finally over. I really want to highlight Lysander's losing animation here too. It's incredibly expressive, you can tell just how furious he is. And hey, remember that victory animation from our trainer that I pointed out all the way back at the start? We actually have a unique one only used in this battle, looking more like a sigh of relief. That's just a great attention to detail. Even though he, well, lost, Lysander just isn't giving in. Shauna at least tries talking softly with him, reminding him of his bonds with his Pokemon and how, in Mega Evolving, his Gyarados did share a genuine connection with him. And Caleb even suggests the obvious, how everyone should work together to make a beautiful world. But Lysander's just too stuck in his ideals to believe any of that. He reveals that there's just enough energy to fire one shot of the ultimate weapon, even going completely manic in the end, telling us to join him in being granted eternal life just so we can suffer the pain of never seeing the world improve. That's a shockingly dark fate, and it's actually a bit different in why, with him instead threatening to kill everybody. Well then, I mean, either way we get the hell out, and subsequently watch on in horror as the weapon fires into the sky, then right back onto itself, destroying it alongside Team Flare's base for good. And that's all she wrote for Lysander and Team Flare. For all we know, everyone down there, Lysander included, died from the blast. Or worse, in X specifically, is now stuck down there buried in rubble with the inability to die. Or you know, he could just come back in ZA because God forbid there be consequences in this story, right? Well, one fade to black lightens the mood real quick, as everyone is here. Tierno and Trevor were actually helping the whole time, even though we didn't see them, supposedly freeing the Pokemon that were tied up on Route 10. And with that, everyone's pretty content to just get back to what they were doing before the whole terrorism thing happened. Though, before we can follow, AZ appears one last time to finish the story he told earlier. After the man's Pokemon left him, he was distraught. They never reunited, and as AZ describes it, he became a shell of a man, with his now eternal life forcing him to wander forever without his partner. And on that note, the story pretty much ends. Not that it had much presence in the first place, but I digress. Yeah, this is one of the Pokemon games with the issue where, even though the plot is over, you've still got to become the champion, so there's still a couple more hours of game to go until you're really done. And X and Y are some of the biggest offenders in this field. We've still got like 2 whole towns left, 3 big routes, and you know, our 8th gym badge before we can even get to Victory Road. So with absolutely zero story left to push us forward, the last 3 or 4 hours of the game are kind of on autopilot. With the story being the way it was, it's almost like nothing's changed now. Picking back up from Anastar, Route 18. A relatively small and simple route, but shockingly packed with content. First, theming-wise, it's another new one. Having an abandoned mine with old railway tracks we have to pass over, but we'll get to that. Now in terms of stuff, there's Pokemon that jump scare you from the bushes, that's new. And also, in this conspicuous house, we can find Inver, who offers to face you in inverse battles. This late in the game, and we're being introduced to a brand new battle type. Now, they may look like normal single battles, but inverse battles, well, invert type matchups. It's a very basic concept, but shockingly fun, especially with how much they manage to screw with your muscle memory. Plus, they make for some very uncomfortable images. The caveat, though, is that you can only do these once per day, and also only here. They're such a fun idea that's somehow more limited than Sky Battles. Like, if they decided to make Salamence levitate for this, I'd be way more on board. But the bigger attraction on Route 18, Terminus Cave. An entire massive dungeon that's completely optional, consisting of multiple floors with tons of trainers, unique encounters, and loads of valuable items. It's got a pretty interesting design for a cave too, mainly with the different branches with items, splitting off into all corners of the map. It's overall mostly standard, but certainly not bad. And at the deepest point of it, we find a chamber blocked off by an ace trainer telling us to return once we're champion. Well, I guess that's something to look forward to. Too bad the Pokemon behind it didn't have much to look forward to. Wait, we can't make those jokes anymore. Well, with Route 18 all said and done, we find ourselves in Kuraway Town. A very small settlement found in a valley. It's visually interesting at least, not only with some really nice looking waterfalls, but also this train station, which was ripe with theories back in the day. Tons of rumors surrounding DLC that would eventually connect this place to Kanto, good times. And hey, I guess times never really change, do they? Anyway, as for what little plot there is left, we encounter Sycamore here, who is very quick to thank us for, you know, saving the world. But it's not all congratulations though. He apologizes for what Lysander put us through, and mentions how, in hindsight, he probably should have talked to him about this. Yeah, I mentioned that a bit earlier, but it's kind of weird how that just never gets addressed until now. And this just confirms that Sycamore knew something was up, but didn't do anything about it. Better late than never, I guess. Even though he's, you know, dead, but... Well, we're not stuck on that topic for too long with Sycamore battling us now because... It's, to the surprise of no one, not tough at all, but with him using the 3 fully evolved Kanto starters, it's a kind of interesting team at least. With that victory, our business in this town's been taken care of. Though before we go, Sycamore does mention that he left some kind of treasure around here, before quickly taking his leave to plan a little surprise for us saving the world. And while the big surprise does sound exciting, I hope it's a PlayStation. The supposed treasure Sycamore mentions is easily more intriguing. The treasure isn't something physical, rather it's something better, character depth. Up in the town's train station, by pressing A on a random seat, you'll uncover a secret message written by a young Sycamore addressed to his future self. It asks if he became the person he wanted to be, full of uncertainty, not even knowing what he wants to be. But either way, he hopes he'll end up living each day to its fullest. It's a really sweet message in general that just so happens to add a ton to Sycamore's character, revealing that he likely found himself in a similar position to Shauna, funnily enough, on his own journey filled with worries about being aimless. This text is truthfully one of the best character moments in the entire game, and it's found carved into a train station seat! Oh my god, that means Sycamore's canonically a vandal! Next up, Route 19, and this one's a bit special, honestly. Not in the sense that there's some crazy gimmick or anything, rather, it almost feels like a culmination of most of the region put together in a weird way. It's pretty normal and mountainy for the most part. Meanwhile, the bottom of the route is more swampy, with the deep water from Route 14 even coming back. There's a small section bringing back the rocks you had to jump across on Route 8 from a long while ago, and even the flowers we see on this route are mostly the purple ones, which we haven't seen since Route 7. Oh, also, Numa got confused here, and since Aegislash's stats are like that, they almost killed themselves instantly. That was pretty cool. And as if that wasn't enough of a bookend of sorts, while crossing this giant bridge with a really neat camera angle showing off the rest of the route, Shauna catches up to us, this time asking for a battle. Now, usually, this would be unremarkable. Like, Calum really spoiled us on random out-of-nowhere battles. But for Shauna to do it specifically, that's special, because the last time we fought her was when we got our starter. This is her second and final battle in the game, and it sadly doesn't even feel all too climactic, mainly thanks to her subpar team. No, it's okay, Shauna, you get a pass. Afterwards, Trevor and Tierno naturally come too, and both of them also suddenly prompt a battle, with Tierno going first for his third battle in the game. Blah blah, none of these are very hard, but I do want to point out a detail in Tierno's team. His whole thing is dancing, of course, so naturally all of his party members know a dancing move. That's pretty cute. Then there's his Rose Raid knowing only a dance move. I respect the dedication. And last comes Trevor, of course, in his second battle. And you might have noticed something by now, that being that Calum just isn't here, with the group filling us in that he's apparently training with the Mega Evolution Guru. Having a bit of build-up this time. Spoilers, he doesn't use a Mega in his next battle, Well, after that, we're done. Everyone starts going their separate ways once again, but Shauna hangs back just a bit to talk with us, saying how glad she's been to go on this journey alongside her friends. She's made memories, met tons of new people, and last, she thanks us for being here. Oh, and she gives us the HM for Waterfall! And that's it for our friend group. Their arcs have concluded, with this being the last we'll be seeing of them until the post-game. And yeah, aside from Shauna, none of them really did anything. They try to give Trevor some kind of self-doubt moment here after we beat him, but not only is this literally the only time something like that has come up, but it's also, I kid you not, a single text box. The idea of traveling with your friend group really was a great one, but man, these guys were not executed well at all. They deserve so much better. Or not, depending on who you ask. At the end of Route 19 lies our final city, Snowbell. As the name implies, bringing back the snow theme. Just because? No, seriously, were things shuffled around in development? There was already Dendemil Town that, despite having nothing more than a light snowfall, was directly connected to 2 super snowy areas. And then absolutely 0 signs of snow until now. And then on the map it makes less sense. But just looking at this place for what it is, it's surprisingly emotional feeling. It's mainly down to the music, having an almost somber and haunting feeling, yet also sounding beautiful. While there aren't really any major attractions here, there is this guy, apparently being a friend of Lysander, with him making it known that Lysander did truly want to help people at first, before starting to be convinced of humanity's stupidity. And while cool to see even the tiniest bit more of his character, why are they still trying to make him sympathetic? This really reads like it's trying to shift the blame away from him. Oh, he was trying to help, but the world was against him. Like, no, he was trying to kill everyone not part of his club. Anyway, we try going to Snowbell Gym, but the leader's actually gone, left for the Winding Woods. Wait, does that mean a gym leader outside of their gym? Oh, that's unheard of, I've gotta see this! Now for the Winding Woods, or rather just Route 20. But really, this is hardly a route in any sense, more like a dungeon, split into a bunch of different rooms, all with unique layouts, and some with multiple entrances and exits. And while most of them are connected normally, like you'd expect a location to work, other passages may warp you to completely unrelated areas, or even change where they bring you as you go in and out of them. Pretty much Pokemon's own Lost Woods, if there were zero clues whatsoever. But it's certainly unique and very elaborate, so it's shockingly fun to navigate for being what's more or less just a fancy maze. And at the end of said maze, we step into the light to find... This is Pokemon Village, and also the gym leader we were looking for, Wolfric. Place is apparently where runaway Pokemon gather after they've been abandoned or hurt by their trainers. It's a pretty somber place because of that element, but otherwise, come on, it's a Pokemon village, that's awesome! With little huts and sculptures and trinkets gathered around. And there's also this mysterious cave that, much like the one in Terminus Cave, is blocked off to anyone other than champions. Oh, I wonder what that could be for! Huh, I had no clue that neglecting your pets could result in such an aesthetically pleasing place. According to himself, Wolfric's actually here because, from time to time, he just comes to check up on the Pokemon. It's a really simple reason, but also super sweet, and it near single-handedly makes him one of the best gym leaders in the region. Well, he makes his way back to the gym, so it's only natural that we do too. And the interesting bit about Snowbell's gym is that it has the only real gym puzzle in the region? At least in the sense that, well, you're actually doing a puzzle. You press different colored buttons to rotate these massive squares into positions that you can actually walk across. It's not a long gym with only 2 of these puzzles actually in it, but what it is a nice little brain teaser. Or maybe I'm a bit stupid, so, as for the showdown with Wolfric himself, for as cool of a guy as he is, he's kind of pathetic as a final gym leader. Not only is he stuck with a mere 3 Pokemon, which admittedly isn't a new thing for final gym leaders, but said 3 Pokemon are also Cryogonal, Abomasnow, and Avalugg, all being kind of ass battle-wise. I do like to think that him having a Cryogonal might be a reference to him being a fan of Bryson Man, but that doesn't change the fact that he's still using a Cryogonal. So with Numa very easily sweeping the entire thing, that's the 8th gym dealt with, thus earning ourselves our final badge, the Iceberg Badge. Victory Road now lies right before us. Quite literally. Route 21, between Snowbell and Victory Road, is more of a formality than anything. It's tiny, really only having a couple paths off to the side for items, alongside a tutor for Draco Meteor, if you're into that sort of thing. So here we are back in Victory Road's entrance from so long ago. It's finally come full circle, but this time we can actually enter. But not before the trainer at the reception battles us to prove we're worthy. Not a tough fight, but this sudden hostility sets a pretty dangerous precedent going in, and that's pretty cool. Well, we're finally here, Kalos' Victory Road. And it's pretty damn solid, actually. It should be talked about more. It's not only filled with old ruins that act as both part of the decor and layout, which is just a flat-out cool theme, but said layout is also pretty decent. Now, there aren't really any puzzles, which, at least to this point, were kind of a staple of Victory Roads in the past, with the closest thing we get here being a single room with some ledges to navigate, but this Victory Road does make up for that in a way by being pretty damn long. You're constantly going in and out of caves, switching back and forth between the indoor and outdoor sections, all the while finding yourself going higher and higher up. It's a great visual. Plus, the music's pretty good here too. Not one of the best Victory Road themes, Hoenn and Unova still win there. Hell, I'd argue that Alola's is fantastic too. Good Victory Road, if you ignore the XY-ism of the trainers being this. Oh, and if that wasn't easy enough, halfway through there's a free heal just because. Though to be fair, this is right before an encounter with Calum, our final one. And Calum opens this conversation with some of the most baffling fucking dialogue in the entire franchise. So, you know how Team Flare wanted to murder everyone that wasn't part of their little club? All in the name of making the world more beautiful, which nobody should have to spell out is utter insanity. Well, Calum says that since we chose to side with humanity at large, thus not siding with Team Flare and actively pushing them away, maybe both sides are in the wrong. Okay, like, I understand that Pokemon X and Y's whole theme is the beauty and differences and understanding that it's okay to have different opinions. Team Flare was actively going to kill everybody! They're objectively in the wrong! It's a good message, but it's in the game with the wrong evil team! Sure, if you're really trying to agree with them, they do have the somewhat noble cause of trying to keep the world beautiful, but, no. That's a big part of what sours even the best part of this game's story. The climax isn't the best, but it's decently well done. But the game just keeps trying to make us sympathize with Team Flare one way or another. In a way, even going against its own writing. Lysander, back during our first visit at the cafe, was very vocally against the king building the ultimate weapon for his own desires. But despite that, Lysander ends up doing essentially the same horrible thing, with the use of the ultimate weapon specifically just furthering the parallel even more. He's a massive hypocrite, and the game seemed to know this, until seemingly changing its mind and trying to convince us that he was kind of right? I genuinely don't have words. This isn't in the script. I don't get this. Why did they make it? Why did they do this? Well, all that questionable stuff aside, we do our final battle with Calum. And yeah, it's as standard as ever, with his new Absol being pretty negligible. Man, if only it had a Mega Evolution. Well, with our beloved Adachi getting the killing blow, that's it for Calum. Afterwards, he reassures us of our rivalry, wishes us luck with the league, and heads off. Admittedly, it is pretty neat that, albeit very subtly, Calum's goals have shifted from being the strongest trainer to beating us specifically. In a sense, being another thing that hammers home the whole friend group dynamic. But forget all that sappy stuff, we're finally free from Calum! Yippee! It's not much longer after that until after a final round of trainers, we finally find ourselves standing directly in front of the Pokemon League. It looks so genuinely cool too. All the architecture in Kalos has such a unique style. And that uniqueness extends to the interior too, with us being greeted by some sort of art gallery. No doubt just one final way to hammer home the game's whole beauty theme. And as we continue to the main room, they hammer it home more. This place looks gorgeous. No wonder they turned it into a Smash Bros. Stage. But before we can fight some battles, we run into the news lady from way back after the Pokeball Factory? This is Malva. She pretty much just gives us a rundown of how the Elite Four works, blah blah blah, if you lose you start over. Then she makes a comment at the end though, sarcastically saying it should be easy since we're the hero who took down the big bad Team Flare. And if you couldn't piece it together, and it's also directly revealed later anyway, so Malva, the Elite Four member and famous newscaster, is also part of Team Flare. And what do they do with this interesting concept of an evil team member also being part of the Pokemon League? You already know the answer, they don't do anything with it. After that encounter, it only makes sense to go to her chamber first, right? All of the Elite Four's chambers are just more visual showcases, and that's fair because they look really nice. Take Malva down and we'll go for the Ironworks chamber next, starring Wigstrom. He acts exactly how he looks like he would. And you know what, as to not waste time, Seabold and Drasna are the other two. This batch of Elite Four members isn't exactly bad. I mean, lots of the Elite Fours, aside from Univas really, are honestly kind of forgettable with some pretty one-note characters. And yeah, all of these guys, save for Malva, are the same case. Seabold asks us if we think Pokemon battles are an art, which is a cool question, but that's really all his character is. And Drasna's your pretty archetypical sweet old lady. I need her carnally, but that's besides the point. They're all very easy. Wigstrom's Klefki has Prankster and sets a layer of spikes, but that's the most involved these battles get. Well, with the Elite Four taken care of, we get access to the Radiant Chamber. Taking the floating platform up, we find ourselves standing before Diantha? Yeah, Diantha being the champion is kind of supposed to be a twist, isn't it? Whereas now it's common knowledge and everyone hates her for some reason. She mentions herself being a trainer in her free time during the few times you encounter her, and then bam, this is it, her being a trainer. Kind of pointless as a reveal, especially since we've only seen her twice before this point, but it's a fun concept. Huh, sounds like half of the rest of the game. She recognizes us pretty quickly from our meetings before, plus Sycamore's apparently already told her about how he stopped Team Flare. But despite all that, she still hasn't seen what our Pokemon are capable of firsthand, so it's time for the final battle. It's kind of funny how of the very few trainers in this game that use 3D models in their battles, the champion of the region isn't one of them. Well, either way, that's not important right now. Her battle, while infamously very easy, is actually designed in a pretty fun way. All 6 of her Pokemon specialize in a different stat, as in each one has a different highest stat. And for a champion battle, that's a great idea. In practice though, Diantha's Pokemon selection is kind of questionable. Like, she uses an Aurorus, and I don't think that counts as specializing in anything. And to cap off all the beauty parallels, she sends out Gardevoir and Mega Evolves it. Fancy that. Well then, no better way to end this than with our own Mega Evolution. In spite of having the type advantage, a couple Petal Dances from Adachi are enough to take her down. And that's it! We enter the Pokemon into the Hall of Fame, now being a new champion. Or that would be it in most Pokemon games. Sycamore did mention having something planned for us. And as the on-screen text says, our friend group is getting our own celebration for defending the region from Team Flare. And is this the only time when the player gets properly celebrated for saving the region? Sure, in some other games it does get mentioned by a few NPCs, but there's never been anything to this scale. It's nice, really makes it feel like the things we did mattered in spite of everything, even earning ourselves the honor of Kalos from it all. Hey, fun fact, in the storyboard of the scene, the honor of Kalos is a hamburger. This is real, I'm not making that up. We receive our hearty thank yous, but there is still one plot point left open. Okay, well, it's Kalos, so there's a lot, but right now, AZ appears, and he asks us for a battle, so that he can know what a trainer really is. This fight is more of just a victory lap story moment. Hell, even if you do somehow lose, the game progresses anyway. It is a nice moment though, especially when you notice that all of AZ's Pokemon have the move Return, showing that he really loves them. After the battle, he flashes a quick smile and tells us that he finally feels free. Being a trainer means to truly love Pokemon. And with that, the sorrow AZ held for so long, the hatred he had towards Pokemon that made him build the ultimate weapon, vanishes. And with the love returning to his heart, as does his Floette after 3,000 long years. Look, I get this shot as a meme, and a good one at that, but in context, it's honestly very touching. And with that, the credits roll. This final closing part of AZ's story is really great, if not feeling a little abrupt. Like, the last time we saw him before this, he was still wallowing, and now suddenly 3,000 years of torment are gone just like that. It's a lot like this game's climax, really, where the story has its great moments, but those don't make for a good story. For most of the game, it practically doesn't exist. There's the whole Mega Evolution arc for like the first third of the game, and then absolutely nothing happens until the climax. And the story's themes, while sometimes accomplished well, and just being really good themes in their own right, aren't utilized to their fullest, or are flat out poorly utilized sometimes. Though on the topic of those themes, Pokemon X and Y's credits of all things are pretty special. They seemingly start out standard, but then the music piece KISEKI plays. And it has lyrics as displayed on the bottom screen. Wait, no, it's not some kind of Ed Sheeran jump scare. In fact, it's not sung at all, just an instrumental. But that's for good reason. For every language the song is written in, the lyrics are completely different. And no, this isn't just a translation thing to get the right amount of syllables or whatever. These are entirely different sentences. They more or less have the same theme no matter the language though. Bonds and how lucky we are to meet the people we can meet. And with those bonds, you can create the world you want to. No Mega Death Laser required. It's also worth noting that during Pokemon Symphonic Evolutions, a concert they did back from 2014 all the way until 2018, they performed this song live with vocals, and yeah, it's pretty nice. Now enough musing about the game's themes, what about the gameplay? Well, we can't get a complete verdict yet because there's still more game left!
It's post-game time!
Pokemon X and Y's postgame isn't exactly the most packed with content, but it does still have content to do. The first thing we're told upon hopping back in is that Sycamore's waiting for us at Lumiose Station of all places. A location that before this point was entirely useless. But before we can get there, Shauna interrupts us when we step outside, offering to trade us a Pokemon, being like a friendship bracelet as she says. She just gives you whichever starter she chose in exchange for any other Pokemon, but it's a really cute interaction, another way of reinforcing our friendship. But, like, why didn't they do this reinforcement during the story instead of after it ended? Anyway, we enter Lumiose Station, and after receiving the National Dex from Dexio and Cena, we encounter Sycamore, who, after a few words, gives us access to a completely new area, Kilude City, which is pretty much just post-game town. And you'll know what that means very quickly. At least visually it's pretty nice, barring the fact that it tends to rain often here. Very vibrant with unique stony paths, it almost looks like some kind of resort. And as for what we're supposed to do here, we're not given any direction at all. Even though there is a specific sequence of things you have to do to unlock more of the post-game, the game itself doesn't tell you what it is, and it's not super obvious either. Damn, where's Trevor when you need him? But before doing any of that important stuff, Kilude City has the Friend Safari, and this is one of those things that screams post-game town. Upon entering and talking to the receptionist, you'll be shown your 3DS friends list. God damn it. Your 3DS friends list with each person on it having a type assigned to them. And when you select one of those friends, you'll be plopped into this very exciting square patch of grass where you can find Pokemon of that type. Okay, well that sounds super boring, but it's actually pretty useful. Every person has a different combination of Pokemon in their safari, with at least 2 appearing, but also adding a 3rd if that person's beaten the game before. Sure, they may have been offline for 9 years, but they'll definitely beat the Elite Four soon, right? Most of the mons here are pretty bog standard, but there's also some rarer stuff. Namely, both the Kanto and Kalos starters can appear here, as well as some version exclusives. Yeah, screw Pokemon Y, I guess. But the really useful bit comes in these Pokemon just having better IVs by default, plus a chance at their hidden abilities, with the cherry on top of encounters in this place just having naturally higher shiny odds. Yeah, you see what I mean by post-game town now? Okay, back on track, our goal here is actually the Battle Maison. Yeah, this game's battle facility, which are usually completely optional, is strangely enough mandatory for progression. And again, this is never once told to you. Granted, it's not much, you just have to do a single battle, but how am I supposed to win without the level advantage? Oh, and there's really nothing crazy special about the place itself. Most exciting bit is that if you get on a long enough winning streak, you'll wind up fighting the Battle Chatelains. They have fun designs and use legendaries. Yeah. And now, after doing that, with 0 indication, Calum can be found in Kilut City from now on. He just stands there at the northern point of the city offering to battle daily. And in this battle, he finally does use Mega Evolution, being the last trainer to do so. And it's on his Absol too, so why not just do this earlier? Heck, before the battle, he says, "I'll show you what my new partner can do." Meanwhile, his only new partner is a Clefable? What the hell? How did he know? After the battle, though, he not only gives us the Absolite, but also another message from Sycamore, this time telling us to meet at the Anastar City Sundial. So then we make our way over there and... wait. Oh yeah, the old man we gave the Pidgey was an Anastar too. I wonder how he's... oh. After you beat the champion, the guy you gave the Pokemon to dies. He leaves a note behind saying that even in his final moments, the Pokemon kept him company, so he died happy. And on top of that, by looking at the Pokemon itself, it'll actually have maxed out affection, showing that the man truly loved it. It's a small, shockingly somber moment that captures the game's themes of life and death pretty beautifully. Oh, and he also leaves you a comment shard. Oh hell yeah, I got the inheritance! As for Sycamore, we do indeed find him at the Sundial, where he's apparently found a way to power up the Mega Ring. And on top of that, he even gives his own theory on where Mega Stones come from, saying that they were once normal evolution stones before being mutated by Xerneas' power. A very simple explanation, but it ties everything together shockingly well. You know, until Oras just came in with another theory, so we don't know what the hell the truth is, but it's fine. And then ZA just doubled down on it being from Hoenn? Why? The origins aren't the important thing right now, though, as apparently this sundial has some kind of connection to the Mega Ring, and by touching it, our ring gets imbued with its power so we can now find Mega Stones all across the region. Also, the sundial is never explained either, but never mind that. This is pretty neat, essentially making the post-game a collectathon. And they really can be everywhere too, some just found on routes, others found inside gyms, which only happens between 8 and 9 PM every day. So these Mega Stones only exist for 1 hour at a time, and you can only go for them every 24 hours. Sure, there are tons of maps out there at this point of all of their locations, but that's still a crazy inconvenient time. Between this and how Black City and White Forest worked in Black and White 1, I don't think this series wants you to have other commitments. Well, that's it for that little plotline, but there is still a bit more to do around Kalos. Come on, a Pokemon postgame just wouldn't be complete without the legendaries. Remember those 2 caves that were blocked off before? Well, now that we're champion, we have access to them. First, going to the one in Pokemon Village, it's a small chamber with Mewtwo inside. Makes sense that it's here, considering all the things humans did to it. And it sure is a legendary encounter, in the most annoying way possible. The low catch rate is a given, but it's also got Recover, because of course it does. But hey, it's those kinds of things that make legendary encounters fun, right? After catching it, we even find its Megastone on the ground. Fancy that. Now for the second cave, found within Terminus Cave, we find ourselves in a big, ominous room. And not only are the Creation Trio's orb items here, because they had to be somewhere in the game, but also, of course, the centerpiece Zygarde. Yeah, this guy really got shafted in this game. It's so obviously the Giratina of the trio, being ripe for a 3rd version or sequel. But despite a Pokemon Z being planned, it never happened. Okay, well it did, but it sure took its sweet time. The most we get here is that its dex entries say it's the protector of the ecosystem, which could so easily tie into the whole war thing. In terms of the games, we had to wait until Sun and Moon to get anything on it, and that was pretty much just the fact that, well, it had new forms. If anything, the XYZ anime was pretty much the only source of Zygarde content. Though admittedly, it was pretty cool over there and gave us Squishy. But all that aside, it's another capture for us. And the third and final post-game legendary in Kalos is a piece of work. After you roll the credits, the first wild encounter you get will always be against one of the Kanto legendary birds. Because why not have a bit more pandering for the road? With whichever one you get being based on the starter you chose. Articuno for Chespin, Zapdos for Fennekin, and Moltres for Froakie. And upon encountering them, they immediately flee. You don't get a turn. The battle menu doesn't even come up. So, what you have to do is encounter them 11 total times. And that sucks. Because aside from the element of not getting a turn, they function exactly the same as other roaming legendaries. You can track where they are at the moment from the Pokédex, which is cumbersome to say the least, but also whenever you move, there's a solid chance they'll move. Sometimes it's just to an adjacent route, which is usually manageable, but then other times, they just piss off halfway across the region. And reminder, you need to run into them 11 total times, which sure doesn't sound bad, but consider the travel time, the time it takes to check their location, and the chance that you'll just not run into them finding random wild Pokemon instead. Sure, other roamers do act the same way, but if you play your cards right with Mean Look or something, all you need is a single encounter. It took me like an hour straight of running around just to finally encounter Zapdos enough. And when that's finally done with, it flies all the way over to Azure Bay. Remember that mysterious cave all the way up at the end? Sea Spirit's Den? Well, that's where they wind up, where you can finally encounter them normally. But this thing wasted so much time that we just Master Ball it. It doesn't deserve a second more. And, well, that's pretty much it for X and Y's post-game content. Except, much like some other Pokemon post-games, there's an extra small storyline to do too. But this one is on a whole other level. And the simplest way to put it is, this is where all the writing budget went. But it's also kind of hard to talk about considering it is literally just plot. Really, really astonishingly good plot, but with literally zero meaningful gameplay moments. But there's no use in stalling, so without further ado... The moment we step back into Lumiose City, we receive a mysterious call on our holocaster, with the anonymous caller telling us to come to the Looker Bureau. And to the surprise of no one, it was Looker. This game was released during the time he was everywhere after all. The reason Looker got a hold of us was so he could have a hand protecting Lumiose City, though at the same time he still has to make sure we've got what it takes, so he scattered Looker tickets all across the city for us to find. Chapter 1 is like nothing, literally just this fetch quest. Hell, Looker tells us exactly where the tickets are. But it does get us more acquainted with the city, so that's gotta count for something, right? Oh, and also, the item description for the Looker tickets says they're covered in glitter. Aw, Looker's my little meow meow. Chapter 2 has our first real case, with us being tasked to check out some sketchy activity in the alleyways on South Boulevard. This questline really does have you explore every inch of this place, it's really nice. And wouldn't you know it, one of these alleyways is filled with a bunch of kids trying to keep us out of their secret club. We have to battle through them one by one, but their levels are even lower than the trainers on Victory Road, so by now it's a clean sweep. And in the back of the alley, we discover the thing, or rather the person, that makes this post-game so great. Say hello to Emma. Oh, and don't forget Mimi too. Emma is the best character in Pokemon X and Y by a wide margin. Sure, there's not much competition, but she has such a rich personality with so much depth. Even though she really only has about half an hour of screen time, she manages to show us such a wide range of feelings, emotions, all that. And the only thing holding her back is that most people didn't know about this post-game, or by extension Emma, in the first place. At least before ZA put her back in the spotlight, of course. She's honestly better than a solid chunk of the rest of the characters in this franchise. And just summarizing the story does not do her full justice. But I'll keep doing it anyway, since honestly, most people have probably never done this storyline, let alone read the dialogue in it. Despite having an Esper named Mimi, she's not a trainer. She's just a kid living on the streets. And while Looker offers her to stay in his office, Mimi isn't exactly a fan of that idea just yet, and Looker scares her off. She just runs off into the alleys on North Boulevard, so we track her down quickly, and that's case 2 closed. Though after all that's been said and done, and Emma and Mimi have officially been taken in, we see a scene of Looker questioning if he can really provide for them. It's kinda small stuff, but man, this guy's been around since Platinum, and then suddenly starts getting this insane character depth in X and Y of all things. And hey, speaking of Looker's character depth... So remember Looker's Croagunk that he had in Platinum? Well, here we learn that it was killed in the line of duty! Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. This chapter really displays just how much Emma cares for Looker now, helping out a panicking lady even though she was rude to him. Oh, and Emma can also apparently speak fluent Japanese. This ultimately doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things, but just the fact that she can do this, it adds a bit more to her character, making her seem more like a fully fleshed out real person. And when she learns Looker went off on his own to deal with the Lumiose gang, she flies into a panic because of the trouble he may be in. And yeah, this is where we learn from Emma that Looker lost a Pokemon in the line of duty. And considering the picture on Looker's desk is described as having a bluish-purple Pokemon in it, it's not hard to put 2 and 2 together. Well, we rush down to Lumiose Station and save the day, of course. But afterwards, it's revealed that Emma used to be the boss of this gang. Or rather, the gang saw her as a boss. But that's not what she wanted. For how relatively short this postgame is, it does have its own pretty consistent theme of independence and also family. Now, they don't go too in-depth with it, but it absolutely plays a role in the story going forward. And with this theme, they don't try to gaslight us, yippee! After we all return home to the bureau, Emma starts to let some of her own insecurities slip, wondering if it's truly okay for her to stay with Looker. As in her eyes, she hasn't really helped with anything and is just making things harder money-wise. In spite of all that though, it's so abundantly clear that Looker genuinely cares about her, apparently even being the one to teach her to read. Damn, so all it took to have a good father in the Pokemon franchise was to not be a father at all. He's been providing so much for her that Emma wants to give back in any way she can. So she goes out to apply for some mysterious part-time work, thus bringing us to... Emma didn't return last night after taking that part-time job. That doesn't bode well. And on top of that, we get some news reports from Malva, talking about a mysterious individual who not only broke into the museum and vandalized some artwork, but has also been seen camping out in back alleys trying to steal Pokemon. So naturally, being the detectives we are, we pursue them with Looker as our backup. The first person we come across seems like a normal woman, aside from the name, that is. Must be Galarian. And after a quick battle with her, our suspicions are confirmed, with her transforming into something almost like a mechanical humanoid. And after giving chase around some more of Lumiose City, Mimi appears. And that, paired with Looker's horrified reaction, suggests that this criminal is Emma. But she's not acting anything like herself, directly trying to hurt Mimi. Luckily though, Looker quickly jumps in front, although taking a pretty big blow himself. Trying to get through to her doesn't seem to be working. And she doesn't even recognize her own name right now, calling herself Essentia. And with no more words, she jumps away. So now we find ourselves in the endgame with... This chapter starts a little differently from the others, with Emma calling us seemingly no worse for wear. She doesn't know where Looker's went, with us having to let her know he's in the hospital. And after a very sweet display of Emma showing just how much Looker means to her, she quickly takes off, saying it's that time. Suspicious. Before suddenly a strange man barges in, asking for a battle to verify our strength? As it turns out, we're being summoned by Malva, who's staying in Hotel Rishisma. She requires our help with something, though she also battles us because she wants to. Oh, I haven't really been mentioning it in detail, but throughout all the chapters there have been a handful of battles sprinkled in. Absolutely none of them are anything notable unless you consider teams like this notable. Well, after we beat her, Malva spills everything. The person committing all those crimes is indeed Emma, but trapped inside a special suit dubbed the Expansion Suit. And this was all orchestrated by Xerosic. Yeah, Mr. League of Legends is back! Though Malva wants him gone. Despite them both being proud members of Team Flare, even Malva has her limits, saying he'll sully their honor. I mean, I wouldn't call mass murder that honorable either, but you do you. So with her guidance, we head back to Team Flare's lab to end this once and for all. And Malva even gives us access to the lab's hidden floor, though not without implying she has some kind of deal with Looker to help us out. I mentioned this earlier, it's literally the same layout as the floor we did during the climax, just with the side rooms blocked off. Oh man, how intense! I'm quaking in my boots! Though it is worth noting that a handful of the trainers down here are the members of the Lumiose gang from back in Chapter 3. They simply think they're getting paid to work security. It's a nice bit of continuity. At the end of the maze, we find a room lined with books, all of which chronicling the conception and development of the expansion suit, alongside the various tests Xerosic made Emma participate in. And what we're told is pretty much what we've seen. It gives the wearer superhuman capabilities alongside being really battle-hungry. And what the hell, the ability to shapeshift too, because why not? And this is also where we're given Emma's canon age, being 16. And if we refer that back to all those kids who wanted us out of their hideout because we were too old, that would make the player at least 17, and that's just kinda neat to know. We've come so far from baby Though more importantly among the books, it says that Emma is completely unconscious while in the suit, with zero control over her actions. The various crimes she didn't know she did. We have to check every single tile in here to find all the info we can to make the plot progress, which is kinda clunky and cumbersome, but the room is pretty small, so it's not awful. Oh, and there's Xerosic. He just walks on in, not even noticing us at first. He's also talking to himself, debating whether or not to completely break Emma's spirit while in the suit. Though he quickly denies that thought, seemingly caring a bit for Emma himself. Though when he does eventually notice us, he calls Emma to battle immediately, which we have to do. And for some weird reason, the game makes us battle her 3 times in a row, even though she only has 2, 3, and 1 Pokemon per battle? Like, this might have actually been a bit tough if she had a full team of 6, but nope, we get to take a breather. Oh, what the hell, I should be used to stuff like this by now. During our scuffle, though, Looker and Mimi barge in, and the mere sight of them, paired with Looker's pleas and Mimi's cries, causes Emma to start fighting against the suit. And after a 4th battle, also only using 2 Pokemon because sure, Xerosic finally shuts the suit down. This whole time, he was in direct control of her. And with him claiming his trials are complete, it's over, we all head back. Save for Looker, who kind of has a criminal to take care of here. But we're actually not quite done yet, with one final chapter. Emma receives a letter from Looker, revealing the truth. He's not just a local detective, he's an agent of the International Police, and as such, needs to leave Kalos to keep doing what he does. He thanks both us and Emma for everything, with us being given the honor of having the Looker codename, hell yeah, with Emma and Mimi in particular being gifted the Looker Bureau building. That's their home now. But unsurprisingly, she doesn't accept this sitting down. The 3 of us end up finding ourselves at Lysander Cafe, where luckily Looker still is, alongside Xerosic. She laments not being able to come with him, but Looker reassures her that everything will be okay, even granting her the position as the new head of the Looker Bureau. She knows the city better than anyone else, so who better to keep it safe, right? And the payoff to this bit in ZA is genuinely awesome to see. Massive shout out to the 12 Emma fans who knew of her before that. And you know what? Why not hammer the game's themes in one final time? Looker says that no matter what, their bonds will never change. And Xerosic with the steel chair says that he cannot deny they exist. He even gives her all his Pokemon and the expansion suit so she can control it for herself. And okay, this is the one part of the postgame I kind of have an issue with. They're doing that thing again where they're kind of trying to make us like Xerosic. Sure, Emma doesn't really know he's evil, and Xerosic himself is proven to genuinely care for her quite a bit, but reminder, he is still a terrorist. And now, no matter how nice to her he was, he used an emotionally stunted teenager in his experiments without her knowing. He's objectively a terrible person. But on that note, they depart. Though we do get to see one final scene from Emma, where she wonders, with a genuine smile on her face, if that's what it's like to have a father. Thus ending Pokemon X and Y on a plotline that's completely unrelated to Pokemon X and Y. Seriously, it's tons of plot to have crammed into like 2 hours of game, especially for a Pokemon game. And it's genuinely great, really great. It not only gets us more acquainted with Lumiose City, but it's also just a solid story in its own right. Hell, you don't even really get anything for doing this, just a handful of style points. The plot really is the main draw here, but it's not perfect. This is where the negativity starts. It feels completely disconnected from everything else in X and Y. Like, take Xerosic, the one element from the main game that really carried over to the post-game in any sort of big way. Well, he hardly even appears in the main game, so his presence here, and especially his plan, feel completely random. And also, gameplay-wise, it's exceptionally dull. Quite literally just running to different points around the city, sometimes getting into really easy trainer battles. Though I guess it kind of does carry over one of the game's main themes, that being bonds. And you know, since X and Y's cast is so weak, I'd argue that this postgame does that theme better than the entire rest of the game. But despite all of that, the pretty good story still makes it a decent send-off to the Pokemon games of all time. So, were Pokemon X and Y truly the beginning of the end? What? No, what? No, God, no! They are indeed flawed games, very heavily flawed in some areas. The story, despite having some pretty strong highlights, is, I'll just say it, flat out bad overall. And that also makes the pacing kind of weird. It means a vast majority of the characters aren't really characters. And those aspects do really contribute to these games being pretty forgettable in the grand scheme of things. And also, you may have noticed this with the way I've been talking about so many different themes, but the game is trying to tackle so many of them, bonds, the beauty and differences, life and death, that it doesn't really feel like it's able to hone in on any particular one and expand it that much. But have you considered this? The game is just fun. The area design all across the region is overall pretty solid. The regional Pokédex is massive, giving you lots of options to use at any time, so team building's a joy. But then at the same time, that doesn't really save the half-baked nature of most of it, with things like Mega Evolution or some story elements hardly getting explored at all. And usually, it's not really fair to judge a game based on what's not in it, but in X and Y specifically, there's so much stuff so obviously missing that you can't help but notice it, and thus wonder how much more interesting the game would have been had it been there. They also kind of lack content, in the sense that there is stuff to do, like the trainer PR videos and the berry fields, but lots of that stuff is really minor and unsubstantial. Like, I didn't mention this yet, but in the postgame, you can get the Poké-Radar returning from Sinnoh. It doesn't really serve much of a purpose outside of shiny hunting, but it's there, so that is technically more content. But then there's all the really creative ideas and cool character customization, and these games are weird to talk about, man. But the overall point is, they're not that bad. A solid enough 7 out of 10 Pokemon game. If it were to be put on a tier list of all the games, probably around the middle of B, because X and Y as Pokemon games are there. They're solid, but not too much more. So what I guess I'm trying to say is, these mid-ass games somehow spawn one of the best ones in recent years. If that's not inspirational, then I don't know what is!